Chapter 110. Storefront transfer meant that the owner would sell the store to the other party. In other words, as long as the storefront was bought, it would be a personal property in the future and there would be no need to pay rent. That was why the storefront Yun Jian had her eyes on. Store number 1 of Dongchun Port had a starting bid of 2 million. 2 million was not a small sum in this day and age. Ordinary people who had assets of more than 1 million were already considered to be in the upper echelons of society. Hence, once the starting bid was announced, many who were interested in the storefront flinched. In spite of it, there were still quite a number of rich people who came today, so someone quickly made a bid. 2.01 million. A middle-aged man raised the price. Zhang Taijun, who was sitting at the back corner of the auction house, shuddered when he heard the number. He was running a small business and could be considered one of the wealthiest families in Xinjiang town. However, when he came to a place like Longmen City that was filled with hidden talents, what he could do was insignificant. Hence, he was instantly in awe of these rich people. The only thing he could not figure out was how Yun Jian was able to gain Mayor Gu's favor. Why was Mayor Gu so friendly to her? 2.02 million. Someone followed up immediately after the middle-aged man made his bid. Following that, the people who made their bids rose and fell, but there was not much of a fluctuation. It was usually a 10 to 20,000 increment. Mayor Gu's astute eyes were fixed on Yun Jian all along. Mayor Gu was someone who could not keep his thoughts to himself, so he asked Yun Jian directly, "Girl, why aren't you bidding since you want to buy this storefront?" Zhang Xiaofan, who sat beside Yun Jian, had the same question but he dared not ask. Yun Jian's reply was a simple word: wait. Mayor Gu was full of doubts again, but in the end, he swallowed them down. Store number 1 of Dongchun Port was a storefront that many big bosses were fighting for, so the bidding price was gradually rising. It had even reached close to 3 million. In the end, some bosses who thought it was not worth it gave up, leaving 2 of them to fight for it. 3.1 million. Mo Shilong, you old thing, don't fight with me. One of them had obviously reached his limit. He couldn't help but yell at the other person who had been forcing him to raise the price. 3.2 million. The big boss named Mo Shilong still insisted and refused to compromise. The 2 of them were competing with each other to increase the price, and neither of them was willing to give in. Zhang Taijun, who was sitting in the corner, gasped. He muttered in his heart. Today, he had finally witnessed the competition between the big bosses. That was not something that could be measured in thousands or tens of thousands. A few million for a store. He had never seen such a scene before. After the auction was over, he would be considered a person who had gained a lot of knowledge. Perhaps he could even brag about it to his friends and relatives. 4 million. The hot-tempered big boss had begun to blow his beard and glare. Gritting his teeth, he fiercely quoted a price. This was his bottom line. 4.01 million. The big boss called Mo Shilong was still competing, but his expression was not any better. Spending 4 million just to buy a store was naturally not worth it, so the hot-tempered big boss had to give up. I'll give it to you, give it to you. Humph, Mo Shilong, don't let me get the chance to deal with you next time. The hot-tempered big boss yelled at Mo Shilong. Humph, this old man will wait. Mo Shilong snorted coldly. Finally, a calm expression appeared on his face. Although the price had been raised quite a bit, he finally got it. After all, other than the hot-tempered big boss, no one else present could compete with him. Just as elder sister Li smiled and was about to count down the last 3 seconds. Chapter 111. 14.01 million. As soon as Yun Jian said that, everyone was shocked. They all looked at the little girl sitting next to Mayor Gu in disbelief. They thought that the little girl was only qualified to enter the auction because she knew Mayor Gu. Who would have thought that she would bid and increase the price by 10 million? The crowd was in an uproar and focused all their attention on Yun Jian. At that moment, Zhang Taijun, who was sitting respectfully in the corner, suddenly tensed up. He glared at Yun Jian with wide eyes, his expression complicated. In a large-scale auction like this, if one could not pay the price after bidding, they would have to bear legal responsibility. Therefore, since Yun Jian had the courage to bid, it meant that she could definitely afford it. God, more than 10 million. Zhang Taijun was trembling all over at that moment. All of his family's passbooks added up to less than 200,000. His family's wealth was enough to make people envious in Xinjiang town, but he did not expect that someone would spend more than 10 million to buy a storefront at an auction. The most important thing was that this person who made everyone dumbfounded was his niece in name. Moreover, she was the poorest among all his relatives and friends in the family. Cough, cough, cough. Sister Li could not react for a long time. Fortunately, she was an old hand at auctions and knew how to ease the atmosphere. 14.01 million, is there anyone who wants to bid higher? Sister Li first tried to ease the atmosphere. Of course, many of the people present did not even have 14.01 million. Under such circumstances, who would continue to bid higher? Sister Li immediately started the countdown. 14.01 million going once, 14.01 million going twice, 14.01 million going thrice, sold. Dongchun Harbor Store No. 1 was now completely under Yun Jian's name. Yun Jian showed a smile that did not match her age. It was as comfortable as a spring breeze. Dongchun Harbor Store No. 1 was originally auctioned for more than 10 million. It was definitely not a good deal. However, the person who bought this storefront was Yun Jian, so the situation was completely different. One had to know that she, Yun Jian, would never do a business where she would have to pay for herself if there was no profit to be made. Of course, she didn't want to compete with that group of people, so she directly raised the price by 1 degree and bought the store that was going to be auctioned. Because of this price, the others would definitely not raise the price anymore. Yun Jian paid all the fees in one go and signed a transfer contract with the owner of the previous store. The store was officially included in her name. By the time he was done, it was already late. After leaving the auction house, Mayor Gu tried to get close to Yun Jian. His intuition told him that this girl was destined to do great things. When Yun Jian left, Mayor Gu shouted after her, "Little girl. If you need anything in the future, feel free to look for me. If you can't find me, you can look for my grandson, Gu Heng. Let that brat pass the message." At this time, Yun Jian had already walked quite a distance, but she still faintly smiled. Obviously, she heard Mayor Gu's voice. She walked over and got into the Lamborghini sports car. After Zhang Xiaofan sat down, she stepped on the accelerator and the car sped out like a flash of lightning. Zhang Taijun had already rushed out as fast as he could, but he still could not catch up with Yun Jian's pace in time. His whole body was trembling and trembling. He did not catch up. He was screwed. This was Zhang Tiejun's first thought. At this moment, if Yun Jian was standing in front of him, as long as she forgave him, even if he had to kneel down, it would be worth it. For the first time, Zhang Taijun felt that he had failed. He finally understood why Yun Jian was admired by Mayor Gu. Because she had the capital. She had the ability. Chapter 112. Returning the car keys to CE, Yun Jian went back to her room and logged into the web with her laptop to contact Alluring Demon. Alluring Demon was also her subordinate. Unlike Snake, Lizard and Tiger, Leopard, Alluring Demon was in charge of legitimate forces and was involved in all aspects of business. Now that the storefront was settled, the next step was to decorate it. Yun Jian had handed the task to Zhang Xiaofan. Of course, it would take some time, at least a few months. Yun Jian wanted to obtain the channel to import cars into Country Z's Longmen City through Alluring Demon. Alluring demon was indeed easy to handle. She had agreed to it just as Yun Jian mentioned it to her and had asked Yun Jian to leave the address. After contacting the dealer of imported cars, they would send the cars over after the storefront was renovated. There would be no shortage of imported cars and domestic cars. Once the matter was settled, Yun Jian fell asleep. It was a dreamless night. Early the next morning, Yun Jian received a message from Snake Lizard when she came back from her workout. The phone she was holding was newly bought by Snake Lizard to facilitate their communication. In her past life, Yun Jian had a phone too, but she changed her number frequently to prevent anyone from tracking her through the system. Now that Yun Jian was reborn and her residence was stable, there were no enemies from her past life who came looking for her. Naturally, she did not have to worry about her whereabouts being exposed due to her phone number. Snake Lizard's message was simple. It was to ask Yun Jian out to meet her at a coffee shop. Yun Jian went to the meeting as scheduled. Snake Lizard was already waiting for her on a chair beside a table in the coffee shop. When she saw Yun Jian coming over, she could not help waving her hand. What's wrong? Yun Jian sat opposite Snake Lizard, her fingers brushing the table lightly as she asked. Snake Lizard lowered her voice and told her, Sister Jian, I have some personal matters to attend to. I have to leave for a while. Ever since Snake Lizard came to Longmen City, she had been calling Yun Jian, Sister Jian, like Zhang Zhifan and others. Yun Jian didn't think it was inappropriate. Okay. Yun Jian nodded in acquiescence. Although Snake Lizard was her subordinate, it was her freedom to leave for a while. This was something that Yun Jian would never force. Also, there is one thing I need your help with. Snake Lizard took a sip of the coffee in her teacup and said to Yun Jian. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. In fact, she had already guessed something when Snake Lizard spoke. The mafia boss of Longmen City, Su Zetian, is a member of the Kosha mercenaries. He's holding an underground tournament at Longtu Mountain a week later and has made a bet with the foreigners. Initially, Su Zetian had requested support from the organization to help him win the tournament. I came to Longmen City using this as an excuse. Now that I'm leaving, I hope Sister Jian can help with the tournament. Snake Lizard looked at Yun Jian and enunciated each word clearly. Her identity was not exposed to Su Zetian and his gang, or he would be scared half to death. A veteran of the Kosha mercenaries had come to Longmen City to help him in the tournament. To the public, Snake Lizard had used this as an excuse to come to Longmen City to look for Yun Jian. Of course, Snake Lizard had left and could not find anyone to help Su Zetian win the tournament, so the first person that came to her mind was Yun Jian. Su Zetian did not have much status in the Kosha mercenaries, but he was still a member. Okay, Yun Jian agreed with a smile. She agreed to help. If Su Zetian was just a member of the Kosha mercenaries, Yun Jian might not have agreed to help. After all, she was a global leader in her previous life, the big boss of the Kosha mercenaries. She was not at all interested in the petty squabbles of such insignificant people. However, Su Zetian was the father of her brother's best friend. Chapter 113 Snake Lizard left as soon as she was done talking to Yun Jian. Yun Jian returned to her school life as well. During the self-study session on Monday night, the homeroom teacher returned to the class after the school meeting and announced something that all the teachers and students were looking forward to, the autumn outing. Yizhong was the best junior high school in the city. It was also an aristocratic school that balanced work and rest. First of all, most of the students in the school were from rich families, the majority of them were rich and powerful. Coming to Yizhong for these rich students, it was not enough to have a boring academic life. Therefore, the school had set up many activities. The spring outing was an event that most schools would organize once a year, while the autumn outing was only held in Zhejiang among all the junior high schools in Longmen City. It was the end of October. When Teacher Yu announced to the class that the school was going to hold an autumn outing, all the students in the class cheered excitedly. Wow! The autumn outing is finally here. Chen Xinyi turned to shake Yunjian's hand happily, almost stretching herself into a straight line in her excitement. Yunjian only had a slight smile on her face, making it impossible to tell if she was happy or worried. In spite of it, Chen Xinyi, who was too excited to notice Yunjian's current state. She was bouncing up and down in excitement. All the students in the class were in a state of excitement. It was only when Miss Yu clapped her hands to signal for the class to quieten down that they quieted down. The autumn outing was here. It was good news, but what everyone was looking forward to was, where would they go for the autumn outing this year? Therefore, when Miss Yu clapped her hands again to signal for silence, everyone looked at her with bated breath. Cough, I know how everyone is feeling now, but don't get too excited, Miss Yu said jokingly before regaining her composure. The autumn outing is next Monday morning, so when you return to school this weekend, you can bring the snacks that you want to eat over. The location of the autumn outing is a scenic forest park in the suburbs. The bus fare and entrance fee are 30 yuan in total. Don't forget to bring the money over when you return to school this weekend. There's also an open space in the forest park where you can organize a barbecue activity. Those who can afford it can bring their barbecue tools and ingredients over. The autumn outing this time should be attended by all the teachers and students of the school. If your family can't make it, you can also apply not to go. Teacher Yu explained everything in one breath. Of course, after the students heard these words, their hearts began to stir. Most of the students who studied here came from rich families, so there were very few students who didn't participate in the spring and autumn excursions, which required them to pay for themselves. Alright, stop quarreling. The evening self-study session should continue as per normal. I'll say this up front. If anyone continues to quarrel in the self-study session, then don't even think about going to the autumn outing next week. Teacher Yu instructed the students to calm down. But at this moment, how could the students still calm down? Other than those whose families could not afford to go, the other students were all in high spirits. However, with Teacher Yu's harsh words in front of them, the students didn't dare to make any noise. Whoosh! Chen Xinyi, who was sitting in front of Yunjian, suddenly threw a ball of paper to Yunjian. If there was someone behind them, they would definitely see that Yunjian's eyes were fixed on the textbook on the table. She stretched out her hand to catch the ball of paper without even looking at it. Chapter 114. Yunjian was automatically categorized as one of the students who had good grades but came from a poor family. Chen Xinyi didn't mean any harm. Instead, she just wanted to help Yunjian. She thought that Yunjian's family was really poor. However, Chen Xinyi wasn't good at expressing herself, so her words were more straightforward. Yunjian pursed her lips and wrote 3 words on the paper that Chen Xinyi threw at her: I will go. When she was done, she crumpled the paper into a ball and was about to throw it to Chen Xinyi when she heard Lu Rongrong, who was sitting not far away, complaining to Teacher Yu openly. Sir, I saw Chen Xinyi sneakily tossing a note to Yunjian just now. It's class time now. Even if everyone's excited about the autumn outing, we can't forget the class rules. We're not allowed to toss notes in class. It was apparent that Lu Rongrong happened to see Chen Xinyi tossing the paper ball at Yunjian just now. Lu Rongrong was shocked. Yunjian was just looking at her textbook, but she reached out and held the note in her hand. However, she didn't think too much about it. She snorted in her heart. What was so surprising about that? It was just a coincidence. Zhang Xiaofan kept chasing after Yunjian, calling her master and asking her to teach him martial arts. However, in Lu Rongrong's eyes, it was just Yunjian's little trick to pretend to be cool. TSK, who was she trying to show off to? Although Teacher Yu was a newly appointed teacher who had just graduated from university, what she hated the most was the sneaky actions of her students during class. Therefore, when Lu Rongrong said that, Teacher Yu immediately walked over to Yun Jian. "It's class time now, and you're passing notes? Do you still want to go to the autumn outing next week?" Teacher Yu stood beside Yun Jian and Chen Sini and said aggressively. Teacher Yu was a very disciplined person. She would never look down on a student or take special care of a student because of their family background. It was precisely because Teacher Yu was very disciplined that as long as a student made a mistake, Teacher Yu would definitely punish them severely when he found out. Teacher Yu had always been very strict when it came to such matters. "Teacher, I saw Chen Sini throw the note to Yun Jian with my own eyes. It must still be on the table now," Lu Rongrong added arrogantly. She had been unhappy with Yun Jian for a long time. However, Zhang Xiaofan and Chen Sini were always protecting Yun Jian, so she didn't have a chance to do anything. Today, her chance came today. How dare Chen Sini and Yun Jian pass notes right under the homeroom teacher's nose? Wasn't this the same as seeking death? Ha! Therefore, Lu Rongrong immediately complained to Teacher Yu. Chen Sini was caught red-handed by Teacher Yu. She hated Lu Rongrong so much that she gritted her teeth, but she was also afraid of being scolded by the teacher. After all, she was usually a good student who didn't get scolded by teachers. Therefore, she lowered her head and didn't even dare to look at Teacher Yu. Seeing this, Lu Rongrong became even more arrogant. She looked at Yun Jian provocatively. However, Yun Jian reached out and scratched her head. Then, she looked at Teacher Yu and shrugged. She didn't feel humble at all. "We didn't pass any note." Then, she looked at Lu Rongrong and blinked. "Student, could it be that you're old and dim-sighted?" She actually said that she was presbyopic. Lu Rongrong almost exploded in anger. She ran down from her seat and went to Yun Jian's desk. She started to flip through Yun Jian's textbooks in front of Teacher Yu. "Teacher, it's here. I saw it just now." Yun Jian hid the note in the textbooks on her desk. Lu Rongrong said as she flipped through the pile of textbooks on Yun Jian's desk. In the end, even the last book was flipped from cover to cover, but there wasn't a trace of the note in front of everyone's eyes. Lu Rongrong was dumbfounded. When the whole class looked at Lu Rongrong again, their expressions immediately changed. Chapter 115. Where's the note? Lu Rongrong, where did they send the note? Don't tell me, you ate it? Ha! Hee hee ha 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 ha. Lu Rongrong's eyesight must be going bad. Ha ha ha. A bunch of students in the class couldn't hold it in anymore and started yelling noisily. Perhaps it was because they had heard the news about the autumn outing, but they hadn't calmed down yet. Now that Lu Rongrong was in trouble, the whole class took the opportunity to make a ruckus. Lu Rongrong's gloomy face instantly turned cold. A haze covered her entire body. She trembled and felt very wronged. She clearly saw Chen Sini pass the note to Yun Jian. How could it be gone just like that? Lu Rongrong, you're framing your classmate for passing notes. What else do you have to say? Teacher Yu frowned with a trace of displeasure on her face. As mentioned earlier, Teacher Yu was a very disciplined person. She especially hated students who did things under her nose. Of course, at the same time, she also disliked students who liked to report fake news and frame their classmates. It could only be said that Lu Rongrong had stepped on Teacher Yu's minefield. Teacher, I really did see the two of them passing notes. Lu Rongrong was unrepentant and even raised her voice to argue. Get out. Stand outside as punishment. Don't attend the 2 periods of self-study in the evening. You're not allowed to enter the classroom during this period. Teacher, you didn't have the patience to listen to Lu Rongrong's nonsense. She pointed at the door and growled at Lu Rongrong. Harmony was the most important thing in the class. Unity and mutual help were a good expression of the class atmosphere. However, Teacher Yu was naturally angry when Lu Rongrong randomly accused Chen Sini and Yun Jian of not paying attention in class. Lu Rongrong was so angry that she was about to explode. However, she didn't dare to do anything in front of the teacher. She shuffled out and glared fiercely at Yun Jian before she left. It was as if she was telling Yun Jian, "This is not over." Yun Jian returned a smile, but it only made Lu Rongrong angrier. Okay, continue with your self-study." Teacher Yu waved her hand and walked away. The first period of self-study was over. Lu Rongrong was still standing outside the door as punishment. Teacher Yu had returned to the office. Many students in the class were active outside the classroom, so there were not many people inside. Zhang Xiaofan went to Yun Jian while he and Chen Sini looked at Yun Jian with admiration. It was Chen Sini who asked softly, Jian, how did you manage to hide the note from the teacher's eyes?" "Oh, where did you hide the note?" Zhang Xiaofan looked at Yun Jian expectantly as well. "Is that's, teacher, that's S's have." Spreading the note out in front of Zhang Xiaofan and Chen Sini, Yun Jian's lips curled into a smile. "It's here." Zhang Xiaofan and Chen Sini were stunned by Yun Jian's action. It was then that both of them recalled the scene just now. When Yun Jian stood up to refute that she did not pass the note, she had scratched her head. Could it be that at that time, she had hidden the note in her hair bun? At that time, she was actually able to hide the note in her hair in front of the whole class without leaving a trace. How did she do it? Could it be that she knew magic? "Master, you're amazing." Zhang Xiaofeng's mouth was agape and it took him a long time to speak with admiration. Yun Jian, on the other hand, had a small smile on her face without saying anything. As a secret agent in her past life, she was the best at hiding all sorts of dangerous weapons all over her body. She could walk, run, jump, and other movements without being noticed. Back then, she had hidden all sorts of razor blades in her hair. Including under her tongue, all over her body, as long as it could be hidden, there would be hidden weapons everywhere. Chapter 116. Ha. Lu Rongrong was so smug just now and wanted to complain about us to the teacher. Humph, she's the one who's suffering now. She's asking for trouble and reaping what she sowed. Chen Sini snickered happily and gave Yun Jian a thumbs up. My Jian is the best. Yun Jian squinted and returned a smile. Looking at the lively and adorable Chen Sini, she was reminded of Lu Fian who was still in Xinjiang town. Lu Fian was the first friend who treated her sincerely since her rebirth. She wondered if Lu Fian was doing well in Xinjiang town now. There was also the basketball team. They would meet again a year later. A week passed quickly. Yun Jian slept in class now. Due to her excellent results, the teachers did not bother with her. Perhaps when she had just been reborn a few days ago, she listened to the teacher in class without being distracted. Now, however, she could no longer listen attentively in class if she had to face the questions that she already knew with a youthful and hot-blooded attitude. When she returned home on Friday, Zhang Xiaofeng did not forget to remind Yun Jian, "Master, let's meet at the foot of Longtu Mountain tomorrow night. Remember, it's 6 in the evening. Don't be late." 6:00 was the start of the tournament. Yun Jian nodded and left the school gate with a backpack slung over her shoulder. She was not going home. Instead, she was going for a walk in Longmen City's suburbs. The evening sky was beautiful. The rosy clouds that reflected from the horizon cast a dim yellow hue over the land, like a girl who covered her face shyly, barely visible. Longmen City was a coastal city and its city was the closest to the sea. Walking past the rows of downtown, Yun Jian came to a tranquil shore. There was no beach here but the waves that crashed on the shore gave her a sense of tranquility that came from the bottom of her heart. Yun Jian sat down along the shore and looked up at the yellow sky, deep in thought. Life was so good now. She was carefree and did not have to worry about being assassinated or facing the pressure of death at any moment. She did not know how long such peaceful days could last. But she knew that from tomorrow onwards, there would be another battle. The challenge tournament would be her new starting point in this circle. Smelling the warm and comfortable light of the evening, Yun Jian sat in the same place. She raised her hand and stretched, with a faint smile on her face. Suddenly, a fair and flawless hand grasped Yun Jian's wrist. Yun Jian was stunned. Someone was actually able to get close to her without her noticing. She glanced over and saw Ci's sword-like eyebrows, starry eyes, and flawless cheeks. "Why are you here?" Yun Jian wanted to pull her wrist back from Ci's warm hand, but she realized that his strength was not as strong as hers. "Guess." Ci's clear voice came out from his thin lips. He moved closer to Yun Jian and his exquisite face was even closer to hers. His breath was almost on Yun Jian's face. Ci's large hand was still tightly grasping Yun Jian's small hand. Yun Jian's body shrank back. She had never been so intimate with a man before. She leaned back and tried even harder to break free. Ci's large hand held onto her wrist firmly, causing Yun Jian to frown slightly. "Let go first." Yun Jian used her other hand to push his large hand away. "No." Ce tightened his grip. Yun Jian's small hand was very smooth and delicate. It was even better than the tender skin of a newborn baby. Yun Jian pursed her red lips. She used her other hand to hit Ci's head in an attempt to free his hand. However, Ce did not let go. He held onto her wrist and tilted his head to the side to avoid her. At the same time, Yun Jian stretched out her leg to kick Ci's leg. However, Yun Jian did not expect that Ce would not let go. Instead, he pulled her into his embrace and the two of them rolled around the edge of the cliff. When they stopped, Ce had one hand on Yun Jian's wrist and the other hand on Yun Jian's chest to guard against Yun Jian's attack. At this moment, it just so happened to be on Yun Jian's chest. On her chest. The two of them were also in a position where one of them was on top of the other. Neither of them had expected this to happen. Chapter 117. It was obvious that Ce did not expect things to turn out this way. His earlobes flushed at the corners of his handsome face. Yun Jian's body had developed very well. Although she was only 15 years old, her twin peaks were already slender and elegant. He could clearly feel the softness of the young girl's ample bosom. Yun Jian's red lips widened. While Ce was still in a daze, she smoothly pushed him away and stood up. Her heart skipped a beat, and an unknown feeling spread through her body. Yun Jian stood up and walked away. Having lived 2 lives, she was fearless in battle and could kill without being noticed. However, this was the first time she had encountered something like this. She had only taken 2 steps when Ce's tall figure blocked Yun Jian's path. He tilted his head slightly, revealing his handsome face to Yun Jian. His earlobes turned red, and he awkwardly said, "Ahem, sorry. I didn't do it on purpose." Yun Jian slowly came back to her senses. Her rosy cheeks were unnatural. In the next second, she pretended as though nothing had happened and said to Ce, "Why were you looking for me?" After interacting with him for the past few days, Yun Jian could confirm that Ce was the kind of person who wouldn't visit a temple for no reason. If he didn't have anything to say, he wouldn't even waste his breath talking to you. Ce didn't hesitate. He immediately knitted his good-looking brows and moved his thin lips. "Come with me." Yun Jian nodded. Thus, Yun Jian followed Ce to the side of the road. Ce's personal Lamborghini was parked by the side of the road. Yun Jian sat in the passenger seat of the Lamborghini. Ce took out a box from the back seat and handed it to Yun Jian. Yun Jian's eyes widened when she saw it, and her eyelashes fluttered twice. A sandalwood box. Ce narrowed his eyes as he observed Yun Jian's every move. You know about it? Ce asked suspiciously when he saw something strange in Yun Jian's eyes. Yun Jian was stunned. She turned her head and returned the sandalwood box to Ce. She pretended as though this was the first time she had seen it. What do I know? I just thought that this box was very pretty. I didn't react in time. This box must be very expensive, right? She had almost exposed her emotions. The sandalwood box's influence on her was too great. This box was the cause of her rebirth. It was also the indirect cause of her brother's death. That was why she nearly lost control of her emotions when she saw the sandalwood box just now. But why did Ce ask her such a question? Could it be that he could tell that she knew something about the sandalwood's way? Ce narrowed his eyes. He stared at Yun Jian for a while before he finally looked away and pretended not to notice anything. To prevent Ce from getting suspicious, Yun Jian asked him, "Hey, why are you asking me this?" Nothing. Ce's eyes lit up. He pursed his lips and started the sports car. I'll send you back. They didn't say a word until they reached home and returned to their respective rooms. However, it was obvious that both of them had their own thoughts. The next day was Saturday. As evening approached, Yun Jian left home on time after she tidied herself up. At 6:00, she arrived at the foot of Longtu Mountain. From afar, she saw Zhang Xiaofan standing on the spot and waving at her. When he saw Yun Jian walking over, Zhang Xiaofan waved at her and shouted at Yun Jian, "Master, over here." Yun Jian stood there and nodded at Zhang Xiaofan and Chen Sini. It was only then that she saw a group of boys and girls standing beside Zhang Xiaofan. They were all around their age. "This is my master, Yun Jian." Zhang Xiaofan proudly introduced Yun Jian to the group of boys and girls. "Pfft, Xiaofan, are you kidding me? This girl is your master? Do you really want to have her as your master? You're a man, yet you want to have a girl as your master? I feel embarrassed for you." A self-proclaimed fashionable boy with dyed blonde hair standing beside Zhang Xiaofan said. This person was Zhang Xiaofang's friend from his circle. Chapter 118. After the boy with dyed blonde hair opened his mouth, the group of boys and girls around him laughed. They were obviously disdainful of Zhang Xiaofan, a rich young master, having a weak little girl like Yun Jian as his master. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Gu Heng, what do you know? My master is not an ordinary person. Zhang Xiaofan waved his hand at Gu Heng and snorted. He was still on Yun Jian's side. Gu Heng. Yun Jian did not say anything. Even if this group of people were talking about her, she felt that there was no need to speak about unimportant things. But when she heard the two words, Gu Heng, she could not help but take another look at the boy with dyed blonde hair called Gu Heng. Could it really be such a coincidence? This Gu Heng in front of her was Mayor Gu's grandson? Suddenly, Yun Jian remembered Mayor Gu's warning that if she met his grandson, she must not be soft-hearted and teach him a lesson on his behalf. Combined with the fact that this Gu Heng had dyed blonde hair and was wearing a pair of ripped pants and a flowery dress that he thought was fashionable, Yun Jian felt relieved. So even Mayor Gu himself could not control his grandson's rebellious behavior? Boys and girls at this age had a very strong rebellious mentality. Yun Jian had lived in a dangerous environment in her previous life. Her only wish every day was to live until the next day. In that kind of environment, she had never experienced the rebellious period that normal children should have. Your master is not a normal person. How could she be different? He, she doesn't have any more arms or legs than we do. What can she teach you? Gu Heng did not have any bad intentions. He just wanted to show off in front of the girls and show off his power. When Zhang Xiaofan heard Gu Heng slandering his master, he immediately went against his brother, Gu Heng. The two of them clicked their tongues and only stopped arguing when it was almost time for the competition to start. The group of people rushed up the mountain noisily. As they rushed up the mountain, they could still hear Gu Heng's arrogant voice. My grandpa has some connections with Longmen City's mafia boss. I heard that the mafia boss has sent a very young woman to fight against a foreigner who almost made it into the international tournament tonight. Tonight's tournament will be very exciting. Gu Heng was at the front of the group, talking incessantly along the way. This group of boys and girls just happened to like listening to him talk about these things, and all of them listened with great interest. A very young woman fighting such a skilled foreigner. Doesn't that mean our mafia boss of Longmen City will lose for sure? A girl asked timidly. Hearing that someone had agreed with him, Gu Heng became even more pleased with himself. He spread the news that he had heard through the grapevine with a sense of superiority. It was as if he was the organizer and witness of this competition. Yun Jian, on the other hand, was slowly walking up the mountain side by side with Zhang Xiaofan and Chen Sini. Gu Heng and the rest did not know that Snake Lizard, who was supposed to fight the foreigner who was rumored to be very skilled, had already left. The one who replaced her was Yun Jian. However, Yun Jian did not feel anything when she heard Gu Heng and the rest's chatter. She merely followed the group quietly and came to the mountainside of Longmen Mountain. We're here. It's here. Zhang Xiaofeng could not help shouting excitedly. Right in front of them, a circular building that looked like a huge football field came into view. Chapter 119. The only arena in Longmen City so far was set up here. Why was Longmen City's Longtu Mountain famous? This huge arena must have played a huge role. People who came to Longtu Mountain to train their bodies would definitely come to the arena to take a look and rest for a while at the mountainside. Of course, Longtu Mountain's scenery was beautiful and had a hint of nature to it. It was a pity that it was evening and they were at the mountainside of Longtu Mountain, so Yun Jian did not get to see the beautiful scenery. Instead, she saw many common flowers and plants along the way. Let's go in. It was not Zhang Xiaofeng's first time here, so he took the lead with a chuckle. Boys like Zhang Xiaofeng who paid special attention to fights often came to watch the arena matches. When they came to watch the matches, they did not forget to call the girls over. His purpose was naturally to show off in front of the girls and say a few professional words to show that he was knowledgeable. As expected, Yun Jian could hear Gu Heng's bragging and the girls' admiring voices along the way. Yun Jian merely rolled her eyes and smiled helplessly. There was a group of men standing at the entrance of the arena today, all of them dressed in black and looking solemn. This group of people gave off the feeling of gangsters in movies, making people shudder at the sight of them. Zhang Xiaofeng led the way to the arena but he was stopped before he could enter. Everyone knew that today's challenge tournament was actually a bet between a mafia boss and a foreigner. Therefore, not just anyone could come and watch the battle. Xiaofeng, move aside. I'll do it. Gu Heng finally had some practical use now. He walked up and looked at the group of men in front of him with heavy expressions. He swallowed a few mouthfuls of saliva and gave them a sideways glance. In an instant, he regained his arrogance and said to them, I'm Mayor Gu's grandson. We're here to watch today's tournament. At Gu Heng's words, the wild-looking man in front of him stepped aside. The group entered the arena smoothly. Gu Heng breathed a sigh of relief and felt smug again. Wow, Gu Heng, you're amazing. You can even bring us in. I thought we wouldn't be able to come in. The girls began to boast about Gu Heng again. It made Gu Heng feel smug again. Jian, let's sit over there. Chen Sini held Yun Jian's hand and walked to an empty spectator stand. There were not many people on the spectator stand at the arena. There were people blocking the entrance. The bet today was not for ordinary people but for the mafia boss and a foreigner, so ordinary people could not enter. There was no lack of spectator stands, of course. Yun Jian and Chen Sini sat on the spectator stand. On the other side, Gu Heng was still busy bragging. He's a person. A mafia boss's man. Calm. Host. Host. Oh. That's amazing. The crowd gasped again when they heard that. At that moment, the crowd saw the beautiful silhouette who was sitting next to Chen Sini on the spectator stand suddenly walk down the spectator stand. She walked straight to the middle-aged man whom they were talking about, the man whom the mafia boss valued the most. Hey, why is she going to that person? Does she know the mafia boss's underling? Chapter 120. Before Snake. Lizard left, she said goodbye to Su Zetian. She directly asked Yun Jian to replace her in tonight's challenge tournament. When Su Zetian first heard the news, he was completely stunned, but in the end, he acquiesced. After all, he had no right to refuse the decision made by the Wuxia mercenary superiors. It was already good enough that the superiors sent someone to help him. Thinking about it from another angle, what if this thin and weak girl really had the ability to win for him? After all, the people sent by the Wuxia mercenaries were not to be underestimated. Their strength was extraordinary. Yun Jian had met Su Zetian's subordinate before, so he naturally recognized her. Su Zetian's subordinate was called Duan Lei. Duan Lei was tall and strong with a strong physique. He was the second in command of Su Zetian's Dragon Head gang. Miss Yun. Duan Lei respectfully greeted Yun Jian the moment he saw her. Although Yun Jian was very young, Duan Lei was still very respectful to her. After all, if Yun Jian dared to participate in today's challenge tournament, it meant that she definitely had some skills. Yun Jian nodded indifferently, then said to Duan Lei in a low voice, "I'm with my friend. I'll come over when the challenge tournament starts." After that, Yun Jian turned and walked away. She only came over to greet him and tell him that she had arrived. On the other side, Gu Heng and the others looked at Yun Jian in surprise. They didn't hear the conversation between Yun Jian and Duan Lei, but even though they were far away, it wasn't difficult to see that Duan Lei was very respectful to Yun Jian. "You know him? He's the underworld boss's underling." Gu Heng took over everyone's confusion and asked with a sideways glance. Yun Jian pursed her red lips and smiled without saying anything. She walked past the group of unreasonable people and walked towards Chen Sini. TCH. Why is this girl acting so mysterious? Does she really think that she's a powerful person? Does she think that she's more powerful than the underworld boss? What kind of person is this? When a girl saw that Yun Jian had ignored Gu Heng and walked away, she couldn't help but shout loudly in order to flatter Gu Heng. She was secretly criticizing Yun Jian in her heart. When this girl was criticizing Yun Jian, her voice was especially loud, as if she was afraid that Yun Jian couldn't hear her. This shout was so loud that even Duan Lei, who was standing far away, could hear it. He couldn't help but frown, but he didn't say anything. The girl muttered a few words about Yun Jian, but when she saw that Yun Jian was too lazy to pay attention to her, she stopped talking. Yun Jian had already returned to the seat between Chen Sini and Zhang Xiaofan and smiled at them. Gu Heng and the others also found a place to sit down, their faces brimming with youthful passion. It was obvious that today's challenge match was something that they were looking forward to, longing for, or even yearning for. After waiting for a long time, Yun Jian finally saw Duan Lei waving at her from afar. Understanding that the match was about to begin, she turned to Chen Sini and said, "I'm going to the washroom." She did not say that she was going up to fight. Although Chen Sini and the others would find out about it sooner or later, they would not believe her if she said it now. She might as well let them see it for themselves. Huh. The match is about to start. Jian, go quickly. Oh, right, do you know where the washroom is? Do you want me to bring you there? Chen Sini offered kindly. No need. Yun Jian shook her head with a grin, bearing a row of neat and pearly white teeth. She then hopped down from the spectator stand that wasn't too high and went around the ring to the backstage after a few steps. Chapter 121. As expected, the match began a few minutes later. Chen Xinyi and Zhang Xiaofan looked anxious. Both of them were wondering why Yun Jian had not returned after going to the washroom for so long. The match was about to begin. At this moment, a tall and sturdy man walked out from the back of the arena. This man was bare-chested, and his broad shoulders and muscular arms seemed to be overbearing and powerful. He was at least 1.9 meters tall. If an ordinary person were to stand next to this man, it would be the difference between a giant and a dwarf. This man was one of the protagonists of the match, the foreigner who had made a bet with Su Zetian. His name was Shiniji. Shiniji was from country Y and was also a boxer in the country's national team. He was so strong that he almost made it into the international tournament. Of course, it was almost. Even so, someone like Shiniji could cause a stir in Longmen City even if he almost made it into the international tournament. Therefore, when Shiniji entered the ring, the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone knew that it was a young woman who was representing Country Z to fight Shiniji today. Looking at Shiniji's physique, did Country Z still have a chance of winning? Unless the woman was even more muscular than Shiniji. Not only did the crowd think so, even Zhang Xiaofan, Gu Heng, and the rest thought so. Master, why did she go to the washroom for so long? Such an exciting match is about to begin. Xinyi, why don't you go to the washroom and look for her? Zhang Xiaofan turned to Chen Xinyi, looking anxious. In spite of it, Zhang Xiaofan saw Chen Xinyi looking at the ring with exaggerated shock. All of a sudden, the surroundings fell silent. It was as if the sound was cut off midway. The place was so quiet that one could hear the sound of a pin dropping to the ground. Zhang Xiaofan frowned suspiciously as he followed Chen Xinyi's gaze to the ring. He seemed to have seen something as his pupils contracted and his eyes widened while his mouth formed an O shape. Looking at Gu Heng and the others, everyone present could only use one expression to describe them: shock. Following the crowd's gaze, they saw Yun Jian's long black hair swaying as she walked out from the backstage of the arena with light steps. She curled her lips and maintained a slightly leisurely expression from the beginning to the end. After a moment of dead silence, the atmosphere reached its climax. Oh my God! It was a little girl. Could it be that the person who's going to fight with that foreigner is just a little girl? Oh my God, did I see it wrong? The mafia boss actually let a little girl fight with a foreigner. Isn't he afraid of losing the bet? Look at the difference in height between the little girl and the foreigner. Do we really have a chance of winning this match? After a moment of silence, a storm of chatter resounded throughout the hall. Zhang Xiaofan stood up from his seat in shock. He pointed at the girl with a faint smile on her face on the stage and gulped. He said in a half-surprised and half-delighted manner, "It's Master. It's Master." Could she be the woman Gu Heng was talking about who's going to fight with that foreigner tonight? Zhang Xiaofan had mixed feelings at that moment. He was worried for Yun Jian, but at the same time, he felt a deep sense of pride because he was Yun Jian's disciple. In contrast, Gu Heng and the others looked like they had been constipated for a few days. Their faces were dark. Looking at the girl with a faint smile on her face on the stage, Gu Heng gulped again. So all the bragging that he had done to the crowd just now was like showing off in front of a big shot. In the arena, Shiniji looked at Yun Jian's appearance. He put away the same shock in his heart and looked at Yun Jian with disdain. He then mocked Yun Jian in broken Chinese, "Is there no one else in Country Z? How dare you let a little girl fight with me? How can a girl with skinny arms and legs like her fight in the arena? Su Zetian is playing with me." Shiniji's arrogant and egotistical tone spread throughout the hall. Seeing this, everyone present was filled with anger as they looked at Shiniji. Any native would lose their cool in the face of a foreigner's mockery. Chapter 122. Yun Jian's verbal rebuttal to Shiniji made the audience cheer for Yun Jian. Even if Yun Jian could not win today's match, at least she represented everyone and used her words to rebuke Shiniji. This resentment was returned to Shiniji, who had looked down on the Z's people. Of course, with Shiniji's achievements and the advantage of his burly physique, the audience did not think that Yun Jian would win. "Little girl, you've successfully angered me." Shiniji flew into a rage out of humiliation and said furiously. Then, he stuck out his middle finger and pointed it at Yun Jian. His scornful, arrogant, and slightly provocative tone sent chills down everyone's spine. Shiniji looked at Yun Jian and said angrily, "Little girl, since you insist on fighting in this ring, Shiniji, will make sure you come in standing and go down lying down." He was definitely not speaking empty words. When the audience heard Shiniji's words, they could not help but shiver. The underground black market's arena matches were very cruel. No official referee would say something like stopping when it came to a fight. When two people fought in the arena, as long as they did not die, were seriously injured, or even completely paralyzed, no one would care. Even if the other party was really beaten to death, as long as the person had connections with the higher-ups, they could still get one foot in the police station and the other out of the police station. Who was Shiniji? He was a member of Country-Wise national arena team and someone who almost made it to the international arena. He was definitely capable. His sturdy muscles were not just for show. Yun Jian, on the other hand, had thin arms, a thin waist, and thin legs. She was only about 1.6 meters tall and could not even be compared to Shiniji, who was 1.9 meters tall. To put it simply, Shiniji could probably crush a handful of Yun Jian with one hand. Obviously, Shiniji's words were meant to severely injure Yun Jian during the match. After Zhang Xiaofan and Chen Sini heard Shiniji's words, they started to worry about Yun Jian. They quickly accepted that Yun Jian was the person who was going to fight with Shiniji today, but they did not expect Yun Jian to win. After all, the difference in strength was obvious. However, Zhang Xiaofan still gathered a few people to cheer for Yun Jian. Among them, Zhang Xiaofan was the most enthusiastic. His hoarse shout spread throughout the arena. "Master, go! Master, go! Yun Jian, win! Yun Jian, win!" After Shiniji said those harsh words to Yun Jian heard Zhang Xiaofan's hoarse shout. Yun Jian pursed her lips. She did not look at Zhang Xiaofan and the others. Instead, she looked at Shiniji and stuck out her little finger at him. She smiled contemptuously and said, "I'll return the same words to you. Once you're in this arena, you'll have to leave lying down." This little girl was so frivolous. At that moment, this thought appeared in everyone's minds. Shiniji was frivolous because of his achievements. However, why was Yun Jian so frivolous? Pfft! Shiniji sneered at Yun Jian and said, "Then, come on." The person who was hosting today's match was Duan Lei. However, even Duan Lei had to re-evaluate Yun Jian. He felt that this girl was not ordinary. However, he could not pinpoint exactly what was so special about her. "There's no need to announce the start of the match. Just go up and finish it quickly. I'm always ready to deal with you." Yun Jian crossed her arms and looked at Shiniji with raised eyebrows. Her words made Shiniji so angry that he almost stomped his feet. Chapter 123. Good. I hope you can leave this place alive. Shiniji snorted in a strange tone. He clenched his fists, and his knuckles cracked. Everyone who heard the sound couldn't help but shudder. On the second floor of the arena, in the VIP seats, Su Zetian frowned as he looked at the confident girl in the arena. This match was very important to him. That was why he asked the Kosha mercenaries for help. Although Yun Jian was young and looked harmless, Su Zetian knew very well that the people sent by the Kosha mercenaries were all hiding their strength. Even a 7 or 8-year-old child from the Kosha mercenaries could smile and look at you in the eye for 1 second, then pull out a gun and kill your opponent in the next second. And Yunjian, Su Zetian stared intently at the arena, but his thoughts suddenly changed at this moment. Once Shiniji was done with his words, he bellowed and charged at Yunjian with a clench of his sturdy fist. At that moment, everyone held their breaths. Everyone looked at the girl in the arena quietly. Yunjian stood on the spot, narrowed her eyes, and didn't move. Shiniji used all his strength in this punch. If this punch landed on Yunjian, if she was really an ordinary girl, this punch would either kill or seriously injure her. Shiniji was going to be ruthless. Oh my god, is that girl scared silly? She's standing there without moving. Does she want to be beaten into a meat patty? Oh my god. Someone screamed at this moment. Everyone was already imagining the scene of Yunjian being sent flying by Shiniji's punch. Some of the more timid girls closed their eyes in fear, not daring to see what would happen next. Yunjian's grim voice sounded in their ears, "You're dead meat." Yunjian's eyes suddenly changed, and a faint smile spread from her lips. She said this to Shiniji indifferently. Shiniji's heart skipped a beat. At that moment, everyone's heart tightened into a straight line. Hua! Shiniji was even more furious after hearing this, and he swung his fist at Yunjian. But a shocking scene suddenly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Yunjian, who had been standing still, dodged Shiniji's punch at a speed that couldn't be seen with the naked eye. Shiniji didn't think that Yunjian could dodge his attack at lightning speed, and he was stunned for a few seconds. It was these few seconds that became Shiniji's weak point. On the battlefield, a moment of stupor was fatal. Yunjian appeared behind Shiniji and punched him in the ribs and the back. Ah! Immense pain spread through his entire body, and Shiniji fell to the ground with a bang, letting out a heart-wrenching howl. Victory and defeat had been decided in one move. She defeated Shiniji in just a few seconds and a single move. She defeated Shiniji, an expert who almost made it to the International Challenge Tournament. At that moment, Zhang Xiaofan, Chen Sini, and Gu Heng were all stunned. Even Su Zetian, who was sitting in the VIP seats, was stunned. Shiniji, a fighter from Country Y who was rumored to be great and who almost made it into the international arena, could not even last a single move from Yunjian. Was this Yunjian's strength? Shiniji, whose ribs were broken, widened his eyes. He couldn't accept it. He couldn't accept it. This little girl defeated him with one move? That was impossible. She had defeated him. His reputation would be ruined from now on. Shiniji shook his head. He suddenly took out a hard object from his pocket and pointed it at Yunjian. She must die. He has a gun. He has a gun. He's going to kill someone. He's going to kill someone. At that moment, everyone who was shocked by Yunjian's move suddenly screamed. Su Zetian also stood up from his seat with a whoosh. He held on to the railing on the second floor. However, the girl's aura changed the moment Shiniji took out his gun. Her slight smile gradually disappeared and was replaced by a cold and eerie smile. A cold murderous aura emanated from Yunjian. Chapter 124. When they saw Shiniji pull out his gun, Gu Heng and the others almost screamed. Especially the few girls who were with Gu Heng and were prejudiced against Yunjian. They were all students in school and came from powerful families. Usually, they would cry if they hurt a finger. When had they ever seen such a scene? Their legs started to turn to jelly. They hugged their heads and squatted on the ground, crying. Master! Zhang Xiaofeng twitched violently. Seeing that Yunjian was in danger, he wanted to rush forward. However, Gu Heng grabbed the corner of his shirt and scolded him, "You're crazy. That foreigner has a gun. But my master is in danger." Zhang Xiaofeng was very determined. He was about to push Gu Heng away and run toward Yunjian. However, they suddenly saw a horrifying scene. Yunjian lifted her feet and slowly walked toward Shiniji. She did not care that the gun in Shiniji's hand was still pointed at her. Facing the black muzzle, she was not afraid at all. Under everyone's horrified gazes, she slowly walked toward Shiniji. What was she doing? Seeing this scene, everyone's hearts jumped. As Yunjian walked, she pulled out a machete like magic. She pointed it at Shiniji, who was lying on the ground with broken ribs, and sneered, "How dare you point a gun at me? You're dead." Shiniji's hand holding the gun was already trembling. Shiniji was originally a boxer. He was not an assassin or a gangster. If he were to kill someone with a gun, he would not be able to do it as calmly as Yunjian. Another reason was that he was in Z country. After all, it was not his country's territory. If he killed Yunjian, Su Zetian would definitely not ignore it. In spite of it, Yunjian's words had obviously triggered Shiniji further. Shiniji howled on the spot. Thinking about the humiliation he had just suffered, his hand was about to pull the trigger. What everyone was thinking at this moment was, "It's over. Yunjian is definitely done for." Yunjian only had a knife in her hand. How could a knife be faster than a bullet? She also had to provoke Shiniji into pulling the trigger when he was in an unstable mood. Was Yunjian courting death? Ah! Go to hell! Shiniji howled. He ignored the pain in his back and aimed his gun at Yunjian. However, just as Shiniji's finger was about to pull the trigger, a gleaming scimitar flew out from a distance. With astonishing speed and precision, the tip of the scimitar pointed downwards and cut the back of Shiniji's hand. Whoa! Shiniji's hand that was about to pull the trigger loosened, and the gun fell to the ground in a straight line. That scimitar was thrown out by Yunjian. Just as everyone present was still shocked that Yunjian's scimitar could cut the back of Shiniji's hand so accurately, Yunjian took 2 steps forward and rolled a few times on the ground. Almost in an instant, she flipped over and came in front of Shiniji. She got up and stepped on Shiniji's ribs that were already heavily injured. Ah! Shiniji let out a heart-wrenching scream. At this moment, Yunjian had already stepped on Shiniji's back. She bent down and picked up the gun that Shiniji had dropped from the ground. She played with it in her palm. The entire process only took a few seconds. The people who saw this scene just now all stood up from their seats with a whoosh sound in horror. What did they just see? Shiniji, who was holding a gun, was actually killed by Yunjian in just a few seconds. Oh my God! He was faster than Yunjian, who only had a knife in her hand. Who exactly was this girl? With this kind of skill and speed, this girl was definitely not human. At this moment, Yunjian picked up the gun and pressed the black muzzle against Shiniji's face. It was unclear whether he had fainted or was scared senseless. The girl's demonic voice came from above and resounded throughout the entire place. Killing you will be as easy as slaughtering an animal. Shiniji's heart was already filled with shock and fear. He had never seen anyone so agile. Moreover, it was an underage girl. As far as he knew, there was only one kind of person who could snatch a gun from an enemy's hand. Chapter 125. However, no matter how hard Shiniji racked his brains, he would never categorize Yunjian as a secret agent or an assassin. After all, Yunjian's age was obvious. However, her skills didn't match her age. Wait! Miss Yun, please wait. Duan Lei said as he rushed up to the stage and stopped Yunjian from killing Shiniji. Miss Yun, please spare Shiniji's life for the sake of our boss. Having witnessed what Yunjian was capable of, Duan Lei felt genuine respect for her as he spoke to her hastily. Although Shiniji deserved to die, he was a member of Country-Y's national arena team. Killing him was equivalent to killing a key figure that Country-Y had groomed. Naturally, Country-Y's people would not let it go. This was no longer a matter of personal grudges. It would lead to a bloody battle, and the consequences would be severe. You want me to let him go? Yun Jian raised her eyebrows as she held the pistol and patted the black muzzle on Shiniji's face twice. Faced with the young lady's questioning, Duanlei could not help but gulp. Finally, he mustered up his courage and nodded. Yes. Sure. Yun Jian's casual words made everyone present heave a sigh of relief. After all, this was a competition. Shiniji's drawing of a pistol was enough to make everyone afraid. If Yun Jian were to kill someone in public, many people present would probably lose sleep for several nights. At that moment, Yun Jian's eyes suddenly sharpened. She lifted her foot from Shiniji's back and took 2 steps back to stabilize herself. Then, she said to Duanlei, I can let him go. At that point, even Shiniji, who was lying on the ground and starting to feel dizzy, breathed a sigh of relief. The one thing he regretted the most was underestimating Yun Jian. Don't mess with her. But his hand, I want it. Yun Jian's casual words were suddenly heard in the next second. What followed was the crisp sound of a gunshot. Bang! Bang! The gunshot sounded and the gun fell. 2 bullets pierced through Shiniji's wrist and into his bone marrow. Ah! 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 Shiniji howled in pain. When the bullet entered his hand, it was as if it had penetrated a piece of wood, piercing his liver and spleen. Ah! The screams came from the spectators' seats. Spear! Yun Jian actually fired the gun. Compared to some timid girls, Zhang Xiaofan and the others were full of passion. Although they were also afraid, they couldn't help but admire Yun Jian from the bottom of their hearts. Everyone present had seen Shiniji's previous attitude. Shiniji had not only ridiculed Yun Jian, but more importantly, he had ridiculed Country Z. He had ridiculed their country. Just based on this point alone, even if Shiniji died 10,000 times, it wouldn't be enough to appease the hatred in their hearts. Looking at his wrists that were shot by the pistol, Shiniji fainted. Yun Jian's 2 shots not only crushed Shiniji's dignity, but also ended his career as a boxer. Because Shiniji's meridians were broken, it was equivalent to his hands being crippled. The most basic requirement for a boxer was to have a pair of strong hands. After Yun Jian fired the shot, she threw the pistol to Duanlei and said, "Tell your boss that I've won the match." After she finished speaking, she turned around and walked out of the ring. Duanlei hurriedly caught the pistol that Yun Jian had thrown to him. He swallowed his saliva and turned around to clean up the mess. Seeing that the match had ended, the protagonist, Yun Jian, also walked out. Zhang Xiaofan and the others hurriedly ran out after her. Chapter 126. Before Yun Jian could step out of the arena, Zhang Xiaofang's urgent voice came from behind her. "Master, master! Master, wait for us!" She turned around and looked up at them with a faint smile. "The arena is over. It's dark now. It's time to go home." Zhang Xiaofang and the rest, who were running up behind her, could not help but be speechless. They muttered in their hearts, "Shouldn't you explain something? Master, what happened just now? Why did you fight with that foreigner? Also, your posture just now was so cool. By the way, how did you throw the knife out just now? That move was so powerful. It was like a living version of Xiao Li's flying knife." Zhang Xiaofang's words were fired like a machine gun. "Stop," Yun Jian ordered. This voice shut Zhang Xiaofang up on the spot. He did not say anything else. "How am I supposed to answer you with so many questions at once?" Yun Jian raised her beautiful eyebrows and smiled shyly like a young girl. At this moment, Yun Jian seemed to have turned into a fresh and beautiful young girl. It was as if the young girl who was dismissive of Shiniji just now did not exist at all. "This. Then we'll answer them one by one. Master, Why were you the one who fought with that foreigner just now? Also, why didn't you tell us this earlier? Zhang Xiaofan asked the question that everyone wanted to know. Pairs of black eyes stared at Yun Jian in unison. Yun Jian pursed her lips and finally opened her mouth. She reached out and snapped her fingers in the air. Then, she pursed her lips at Zhang Xiaofan and smiled mysteriously. Take a guess. After that, she turned around and did not intend to explain further. However, what Yun Jian did not expect was that Zhang Xiaofan and the rest would follow closely behind her, begging her to teach them the domineering moves just now. Even Gu Heng followed closely behind Yun Jian. He even apologized to Yun Jian for his previous actions. This caused Zhang Xiaofan to brag to Gu Heng and the others somewhat childishly, "This is my master." Yun Jian finally got rid of Zhang Xiaofan and the group of people who were chasing her to get to the bottom of things. She set foot on the road home. It was chilly at night, especially when it was close to winter in autumn. The weather changed quickly, and the temperature difference between day and night was large. Yun Jian was wearing a jacket today, but she still felt a little cold. As they walked past a street lamp, a sports car drove past them and stopped beside Yun Jian. Yun Jian had not expected the car to stop. She pulled her jacket around herself and turned around. Coincidentally, she saw Ce sitting in the Lamborghini looking at her. He tilted his head, and his chiseled features became clearer under the street lights. "Get in the car," Ce spat out 2 words from his beautiful thin lips. Yun Jian did not stand on ceremony. She immediately walked over to open the door of the Lamborghini and sat in the front passenger seat. The heater in the car warmed up Yun Jian's body temperature. "Why are you wearing so little every time? Do you want to freeze to death?" Ce raised the temperature in the car again and glanced at Yun Jian. Yun Jian opened her mouth, but found that she could not refute him. In the end, Yun Jian only said one sentence, "Why are you looking for me?" Ce paused, and a trace of warmth appeared on his flawless face. "I'm taking you to a banquet. I'll be back tomorrow. Auntie has already informed you, so you don't have to worry about staying out all night." As he spoke, he did not allow Yun Jian to resist at all. He stepped on the accelerator and sped off. By the time Yun Jian reacted, Ce had already taken her to the back of the mountain. They boarded Ce's private jet and hurried to Country M. Chapter 127. Country M, New York. New York was located in the southeastern part of Country M along the Atlantic Ocean. It was Country M's largest city and largest port. It was a world-class international metropolis. Ce's private jet flew over New York's airspace and finally landed in an empty space at an airport. Because it was a private jet, there was no need to transfer planes in between. Thus, the flight took less than 10 hours. Due to the time difference between Country Z and Country M, it was around 6:00 in the morning in Country Z. However, it was already 6:00 in the evening in Country M. It was also dinner time. Yun Jian took a nap on the plane. This was the first time she had slept so soundly since her rebirth. When she woke up, the plane had already landed on land. Yun Jian rubbed her eyes and got up from the soft cushion. She stretched and suddenly felt that something was amiss. Cushion? She turned her head and was surprised to find that she had fallen asleep leaning on Ce's lap. What was going on? She remembered that after she boarded the private jet, Ce did not explain the situation to her. She looked at the scenery outside the window and gradually fell asleep. However, she had clearly chosen a soft cushion to fall asleep on the plane. Why was her head lying on Ce's lap when she woke up? Could it be that he had moved her head to his lap? Yun Jian pursed her lips slightly when she thought of this. Even if he had moved her head from the cushion to his lap, why didn't she feel anything at all? This shouldn't be the case. How could she let down her usual guard and fall asleep peacefully without any fear? "You're awake?" Siyi's hoarse and magnetic voice sounded from above her head. Yun Jian looked up and saw Siyi's handsome face turn to the side. His fair and slender fingers were scratching his messy short black hair. His earlobes were slightly red. Yun Jian swallowed her saliva and pursed her lips to reveal a stiff smile. Have we arrived? Yes. Ce nodded. He stretched out his slender fingers and opened the door of the plane. He turned sideways and jumped out first. Yun Jian bent over and also jumped out of the cabin door. After Yun Jian landed on the ground, Ce grabbed her little hand and walked towards the street. Yun Jian was stunned by Ce's actions. She wanted to shake off his hand, but found that he was not as strong as her. This was also the first time she had encountered such a situation. She immediately blushed and lowered her head. Don't look at how Yun Jian could kill people so easily. Even if she saw erotic scenes in her previous life, she could still do it without blushing. However, he felt that Ce was different from everyone else. She couldn't describe how she felt. The banquets of the upper class usually started at around 8 o'clock, which meant that there was still some time left. Ce smiled beautifully as he held Yun Jian's warm little hand and walked towards one of the top clothing stores in New York. This clothing store was owned by a world-class fashion designer in New York. Usually, it received very few customers. However, the customers it received were all world-class bigwigs. As Ce held Yun Jian's little hand and walked into the store, Yun Jian saw two men in their 20s walking towards her. When the two men saw Ce and Yun Jian holding hands, they couldn't help but be stunned. Then, they walked in front of Ce and lowered their heads. Young master, the dress is ready. Yun Jian was also stunned when she saw the two men. They were the two men who had been standing on either side of Ce when she had first met Ce. Chapter 128. Ce nodded slightly. He pulled Yun Jian past the two men and walked towards the changing room. The two men were left dumbfounded. F***ck, is the young master enlightened? He's even learned how to hold a woman's hand. One of the men rubbed his hands, a trace of surprise appearing on his handsome face. He couldn't hold it in any longer and said to the other man. Adam, the young master's matters aren't something you and I can casually discuss. Do your job well. The other man, who looked more composed, reminded him before turning to leave. The man called Adam stood there and clicked his tongue twice. He muttered to the more composed man, Go, 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 you're the most serious one. Ce had a custom-made lace evening gown for Yun Jian. It was pure black and not revealing at all. This evening gown was designed by the world's top fashion designer and was one of a kind in the world. Its economic value couldn't be measured by money. After Yun Jian changed and came out, she saw that Ce had already changed into a formal suit. Ce's foundation was very good. His handsome face was flawless, his tall nose bridge and deep eyes exuded the aura of a king. The black suit clung to his muscular skin. When Yun Jian came out, Ce's fair and slender fingers tugged at the tie of his suit. From the side, he looked like a still and untainted figure in a painting. He was so handsome and delicate that there was nothing to nitpick about him. Even though Yun Jian had seen many handsome and delicate men in her previous life, none of them could compare to the one in front of her. She was stunned for a few seconds. What's wrong? Yun Jian only reacted when she heard a pleasant male voice. Ce narrowed his eyes as he sized up the young lady in the black lace evening gown. Every time he met Yun Jian's eyes, he would suppress his distant feelings towards women and wanted to take a step closer to her. When he first discovered this, even he couldn't believe it. He knew himself very well. He hated women. Ever since he was young, as long as there were women around, he would feel nauseous. If a woman came close to him, he would feel extremely disgusted. This is a quirk. But it was different for Yun Jian. He could feel it deeply. Yunjian's petite figure kept floating in front of him. That faint milky fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose, making him feel a little different. That was why he couldn't help but get close to her, and even hold her hand. Therefore, when Ce saw Yunjian's smooth and tender arms, the lace gown that accentuated her petite figure, and her well-developed twin peaks, he couldn't help but gulp. "Let's go." Yunjian moved her red lips and walked out directly. Ce paused for a moment as the girl's fragrance dissipated into the distance. Then, he strode after her. Country M, New York, the 39th floor of the Triangle Building. In the middle of the room, a dignified and imposing middle-aged man in his 40s was holding a glass of red wine and chatting amicably with a man of the same age in front of him. This dignified middle-aged man was called Si Chu. He was the head of the armaments family, Cold Pavilion. Without a doubt, he was also Ce's biological father. At this moment, Si Chu was chatting happily with the middle-aged man opposite him. Chapter 129. Si Chu followed the middle-aged man's gaze and saw a 17 or 18-year-old girl standing there. She was pretty and had an outstanding temperament among the group. Of course, as the leader of the arms family, Si Chu did not care about the appearance of his future daughter-in-law. He cared about the marriage between the big families and the friendly relationship between the big families. He nodded at the middle-aged man and praised hypocritically, "Old Sure, your daughter is not bad. She has a good temperament." This was Si Chu's highest compliment. He patted the man's shoulder as he spoke. Shichuan's face lit up. He moved closer to Si Chu and smiled. "Then, about the marriage between Ce and my daughter, of course it's a done deal." Si Chu replied with a laugh and an absolute tone. Shichuan smiled and lowered his voice to ask Si Chu, "Then, does Ce agree to this marriage? How can he not agree to this kind of thing?" "Humph. I'm his father. Can't I make the decision for such a small matter?" Speaking of this, Si Chu suddenly felt as if he had been hit on the trigger point. He said angrily. Speaking of his son, he really could not control him. However, he would never lower his head in front of outsiders. Naturally, he had to put on a "I'm the father, I make the decision" attitude. Hearing Si Chu's affirmative tone, Shichuan seemed to be relieved. At this moment, a man walked over and whispered in Si Chu's ear. Si Chu immediately reacted and moved his old face closer to Shichuan. He smiled and said, "My son is here. Hurry up and ask your daughter to come over. Let the two of them meet." Shichuan was happy when he heard this. He hurriedly waved at his daughter, Shichuan. Shichuan had been waiting there for a long time. When she saw her father waving at her, she hurriedly ran over. Her heart was filled with joy and nervousness like a young girl. She had met Ce a year ago and fell in love with him at first sight. The young man's handsome face kept appearing in her mind and she could not get it out of her mind. Although they were far apart, ever since they met, she swore that she would marry him. On the other hand, the Shi family and the Ce family were both military families, and the two families had a mutual interest. The upper-class aristocratic families usually liked to unite their families through marriage to strengthen the trust between them. Although it was the modern era, these old customs could not be changed. Beep. The only elevator beside the banquet hall opened. Shichuan stood beside her father, Shichuan. Her entire body was tense. She even ran her fingers through a few strands of her hair, afraid that her imperfections would be exposed. Only she knew the nervousness in her heart when she saw the person she missed dearly. The moment the elevator doors opened, however, what everyone saw was Ce, who was perfect to the extreme. As well as, the petite girl standing beside him who was also extremely beautiful. The young girl was wearing a lace gown that outlined her petite figure. Her curvaceous figure was revealed in front of everyone. She was beautiful and elegant. When the two of them stood together, it was as if they were a match made in heaven. They were actually so compatible. Si Chu, Shi Chuan, and Shi Laixiang were dumbfounded. Not only the three of them, but everyone present was mesmerized by Ce and Yunjian's stunning appearance. They were unable to extricate themselves. Ce held Yunjian's small hand and walked out of the elevator step by step. They stood in front of everyone. Yunjian realized that Ce had only glanced at Si Chu when he walked in front of him. Without saying a word, he pulled her to the side. "Damn brat, stop right there. What kind of attitude is this? How can you leave without saying a word when you see me? Where is your upbringing? If I didn't know better, I would have thought that you were a bastard with a mother but no father. Also, who is this girl beside you?" Si Chu felt that he had lost face and spoke to Ce angrily. Ce turned his head to look at Si Chu. He held Yunjian's hand tightly and said coldly to Si Chu, "My mother is already dead. That woman is not my mother." When he said this, Yunjian could clearly feel the coldness and loneliness in Ce's voice. Chapter 130. When Yunjian heard Ce's words, she was shocked. But when she scanned the room and saw Shi Laixiang, who was standing not far away from Si Chu, she suddenly understood. This woman was the fiancée Ce's father had arranged for Ce, right? This banquet was probably used by Ce's father to announce Ce and Shi Laixiang's engagement. It wasn't strange for upper-class families to use marriage to consolidate their interests. Yunjian smiled. It seemed like Ce wasn't satisfied with this arranged marriage and was planning to use her as an excuse. Ce's attitude towards her was quite good, so she would naturally help her. Nonsense. Nonsense. It's fine if you usually make a fuss, but today you even found a woman? Are you trying to anger me to death? Si Chu flew into a rage. When Ce mentioned that his mother was already dead, Si Chu felt like he had been exposed in a scandal as he shuddered in rage. Si Chu was the head of the Cold Court, an armaments aristocratic family. After he married Ce's mother, he divorced Ce's mother in order to expand the Cold Court's power and influence. He then married the daughter of another armaments aristocratic family. At the same time, Si Chu also forced Ce's mother to stay by his side. In the end, Ce's mother became depressed and committed suicide due to depression. Today, in order to consolidate his position in the Cold Court, Si Chu planned to use Ce's marriage to form a marriage alliance with the Shi family. But he didn't expect that Ce would have such a huge reaction. He even found a woman to humiliate him in public. This made Si Chu, an internationally renowned armaments tycoon, completely furious. "Brother Ce, it's wrong of you to do this. Don't make uncle angry." Shi Laixiang looked at Yunjian's and Ce's intertwined hands. She dug her fingertips into her skin and played the role of the good guy. She spoke coyly to Ce in a gentle voice. "What are you? What does my business have to do with you?" Ce cast a sidelong glance at Shi Laixiang, not giving her any face at all. Shi Laixiang had originally planned to speak up after Si Chu had spoken. This way, she could improve her image in front of Si Chu and let Ce see her gentle side and have a good impression of her. But who would have thought that Ce wouldn't give her any face at all? She looked at Yunjian, who was standing next to Ce, and she became even angrier. Her eyes turned red because the person she had been longing for had said such things to her. Si Chu felt humiliated at once. He knew that he couldn't control his son, so he pointed at Yunjian and threatened her. "Which family's young lady are you from? Rong family? Wen family? Fang family? I don't care which family's young lady you're from. Get out of here now or your family will disappear from the international stage forever because of you." The aristocratic families that Si Chu had pointed out were all internationally renowned big shots. It was obvious that he thought that Yunjian was a young lady from one of these aristocratic families. Yun Jian was amused when she heard that. She narrowed her eyes and met Si Chu's murderous gaze fearlessly in front of everyone. Her red lips curled up. I'm a young lady from the Yun family. Let me introduce myself. My name is Yun Jian. I live in Country Z's Longmen City. My mom is a waitress at a hotel, Country Z's Longmen City. A waitress at a hotel. Everyone latched on to these words. Si Chu stomped his feet, almost vomiting blood from anger. He thought that the woman his son had found would be a socialite of the upper class even if she wasn't from an aristocratic family. Chapter 131. Si Chu was furious. He did not threaten Yun Jian anymore. Instead, he waved his hand and called for his bodyguards, intending to chase her out. Someone, chase her out. If Yun Jian was a young lady from an aristocratic family, Si Chu might have given her some face. However, Yun Jian had said it herself. She was just a person with no status. Si Chu was naturally fearless and prepared to chase her out on the spot. He had lost all his face today. There was a saying that one should not wash one's dirty linen in public. However, after today's incident, he had no face left. A few bodyguards in black suits and sunglasses surrounded Yun Jian and Ce. I'll see who dares to touch my people. Ce sneered. He calmly pulled out a pistol from the holster at his waist, pulled the trigger, and pointed it at Si Chu. Ce had already decided to shed all pretense of cordiality. Ever since Ce could remember, he had never acknowledged Si Chu as his father. He had not even called him Dad for so many years. In his impression, this so-called father was the murderer who had directly forced his mother to commit suicide. He could still remember that his mother had committed suicide due to depression. Si Chu had always locked his mother up and kept her at home in the name of love. Later, his mother had suffered from depression and was not allowed to seek treatment. Si Chu was a person who cared about his reputation. He did not allow outsiders to know about his family's dirty linen. Hence, when Si's mother had suffered from depression, he was not allowed to seek treatment. Hence, Si's mother had been too depressed and could not bear the torture of her illness. Hence, she committed suicide. Furthermore, she had died in front of Ce, who was only 5 years old at the time. He still could not forget the bloody corpse of his mother. At that time, he was just a child. Since then, he had developed an extreme sense of disgust and alienation toward all women. It had been the same for 19 years. It was not until he met Yun Jian that he realized that she was different from other girls and women. He did not hate Yun Jian. On the contrary, he had a different feeling towards her. Bastard! Are you going to kill your father for this woman? Si Chu was so angry that his hands were trembling. Back then, he had divorced Ce's mother and married the daughter of another aristocratic family for the sake of expanding Cold Pavilion's influence. Today, the Cold Court had become the vanguard of the world's military families, but his most beloved son had turned against him. He had only loved one woman all these years, and that was Ce's mother. But for the sake of so-called face and power, he gave up these feelings of love. He had countless mistresses in his life, and it wasn't that he didn't have any other sons or daughters. However, Ce was the only one he had chosen as the successor of the Cold Court. In Si Chu's heart, everything he did was for Ce. But what about him? He actually wanted to kill him for a woman. Si Chu felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. Shi Lixiang stood at the side and watched as Ce pulled out his gun. She was both in love and afraid of his handsome posture. She swore in her heart that she must get this man. As for Yun Jian, in everyone's eyes, she was just an insignificant person. Without Ce, she was nothing. Beep. At this moment, the elevator door opened again. A woman with a tight figure walked out of the elevator side by side with a man in his 20s in a blue floor-length evening gown. a group of people followed behind the woman and the man. Of course, they weren't ordinary people. On the contrary, they were full of vigor. Even Si Chu couldn't help but take a second look when he saw these people. When he saw the leader of the group of people, a woman in a blue evening gown, he was shocked. The woman's exposed left wrist was imprinted with a skull symbol. A skull symbol on her wrist was the symbol of the Wuxia mercenaries. This woman was actually a member of the Wuxia mercenaries. As for the man beside the woman, there was a large scar on his neck. It looked as if it had been cut by a knife, and it made people shiver. Seeing this, Si Chu couldn't help but gulp. If he guessed correctly, this man was in a cooperative relationship with the Wuxia mercenaries. He was one of the 4 leaders of the underground assassin organization, the Enhan organization, Shuang. If the name of the Wuxia mercenaries made people shiver, then the Enhan organization was a hellish existence. Countless international assassins and secret agents were from the Enhan organization. Chapter 132. Yun Jian was the king of secret agents in her previous life, the world's top secret agent, slaying God. She was indeed a secret agent trained by the world's top underground assassin organization, Enhan Group. Of course, Enhan's underlings could not control her due to her extraordinary capability in her previous life. Slaying God was the only secret agent in Enhan's history to successfully break free from the organization's control. At the same time, she started killing at the age of 12 and left Enhan Group when she was 14. In the same year, she killed the previous boss of Wuxia mercenaries and developed her own force. Therefore, the king of secret agents, slaying God, was known as a legend in the underworld. The only one who could be mentioned in the same breath as the king of secret agents, slaying God, was the leader of Enhan Group. The leader of Enhan Group was a mystery. No one had ever seen him, not even knowing if he was a man or a woman, old or young. The only ones who had seen the leader of Enhan Group were the 4 leaders of the organization. Shuang was one of them. As for the Wuxia mercenaries' forces, there was no need to mention them. Enhan Group and Wuxia mercenaries were 2 major organizations that monopolized the entire underground organization. Even Si Chu, the master of Cold Pavilion, a military family, had to lower his head in fear when he saw people from these 2 major assassin organizations. When Si Chu saw the woman in a beautiful blue evening gown and the man with a huge scar on his neck, his legs turned to jelly. He could not care less about his son, Ce, as he hurried to greet them. His smile was stiff but it was forced as he extended his hand to shake their hands. What a rare guest! We welcome both of you to attend tonight's banquet. Si Chu was the one who had arranged the banquet. His goal was to arrange a marriage between his son and Shi Chuan's daughter. He did not expect the Wuxia mercenaries and Enhan Group to be here, so he was so embarrassed that his face was about to burst. However, the woman in the blue evening gown walked past Si Chu and went straight to Yun Jian, ignoring his goodwill. She stood in front of Yun Jian and greeted respectfully, "Sister Jian." The woman in the blue evening gown was obviously Snake Lizard, who had changed into the black robe that covered her entire body to reveal her sexy figure. The 2 words Snake Lizard caused everyone present to suck in a deep breath. Most of the people there were businessmen and politicians from prominent families and families. The biggest symbol of Wuxia mercenaries was the skull mark on their wrists. It was a mark that could not be imitated by outsiders. Someone who could make Wuxia mercenaries stand in front of her and greet her as Sister Jian respectfully was a rare sight. How could this girl, who claimed to be from a small town in Z country and whose mother was an ordinary hotel attendant, be an ordinary person? Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. She was related to Wuxia mercenaries? Yun Jian nodded slightly at Snake Lizard. She did not expect to meet Snake Lizard here. Snake Lizard had kept a low profile when she returned to Longmen City the last time. She was dressed very tightly, so the skull mark on her wrists was not exposed. Today, Snake Lizard had changed into a blue evening gown. Her enchanting female body was faintly discernible. At the same time, the skull mark on her wrists was also intimidating. The girl in front of him was related to Kosha mercenaries. More importantly, the Kosha mercenaries who did not even care about Si Chu was calling Yun Jian, Sister Jian, respectfully. What did this mean? Si Chu started to twitch. Shi Laixiang was annoyed when she saw everyone's attention on Yun Jian. Chapter 133. When Shi Laixiang said this, she even shook Shi Yichuan's hand and acted like a spoiled child. However, Shi Laixiang's words attracted everyone's attention. Let the internationally famous assassin organization that kills without blinking an eye be polite? Pfft, this Shi Laixiang must be stupid. Was she that lucky? Everyone snorted, but in front of Yun Jian and the others, no one dared to say anything for fear of implicating themselves. When Shi Yichuan heard his daughter say this, he was so scared that his legs turned to jelly. He lowered his voice and shouted at Shi Laixiang, "Xiang, shut up." Unexpectedly, Shi Laixiang did not notice the change in the atmosphere at all. She shouted even more confidently, "Dad, they were in the wrong. They were rude. That's what you've always taught us. We have to be polite. Those who don't have manners are a bunch of lowly and uncultured people. These kinds of people will never be able to show their faces." Shi Laixiang's words were clear and logical. Even she felt that it was reasonable. When Shi Yichuan heard his daughter's words, he was so scared that he almost turned into a puddle of water. Of course, he could tell that his daughter was scolding Yun Jian in a roundabout way. "Shi Laixiang, shut your mouth." Shi Yichuan's trembling finger pointed fiercely at his daughter, even roaring out her full name. However, he could not explain it to his daughter now. If they went against the Kosha mercenaries, the Shi family would probably be wiped out. Because the Kosha mercenaries was an organization made up of international elite assassins, their hands were stained with countless blood. They were so powerful that they were intimidating and terrifying. Simply put, the Kosha mercenaries could wipe out the Shi family effortlessly. "Dad, you're yelling at me again." Shi Laixiang felt even more wronged. At the same time, she felt even more indignant that Yun Jian had stolen her limelight at the banquet. Yun Jian naturally heard the conversation between Shi Laixiang and Shi Yichuan. She curled her lips and glanced over, but she did not say anything. She did not care about Shi Laixiang's words at all. She had seen many people like Shi Laixiang in her past life. If she killed Shi Laixiang just because of one sentence, then there would be too many people in this world who would want to kill her. Of course, if Shi Laixiang made any further moves, she would definitely make her regret being born. Si Chu was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. It was too late for regrets. He never thought that Yun Jian could make the Kosha mercenaries bow down to her. As soon as he thought of what he had just said to Yun Jian and what he was going to do, he felt his hair stand on end. "Miss Yun, we were blind just now and said something wrong. I hope you won't take it to heart." Si Chu was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. His attitude towards Yun Jian had changed completely. Si Yi's sword-like eyebrows flashed. He stood beside Yun Jian and smiled at her. He sneered at Si Chu's attitude. At the same time, he exchanged glances with Shuang, who was standing not far away. "What if I insist on taking it to heart?" Yun Jian glanced at Si Chu and smiled evilly. It made people's hearts tremble. Si Chu's heart thumped and he was sweating profusely. After all, he had been working for many years and had experienced many big situations. He hurriedly smoothed things over and pretended to be calm. "Miss Yun's temperament is extraordinary. One look and I can tell that you are a magnanimous person. Of course you won't take it to heart." This sentence made it clear. If Yun Jian took it to heart, then she would appear to be narrow-minded. Yun Jian smiled sweetly. She pursed her lips and followed Si Chu's words. Of course I won't take it to heart. Pausing for a moment, she curled her lips again. But I'm very unhappy. I want something from you. What is it? Si Chu and Shurichuan heaved a sigh of relief. Chapter 134. Since when did he become a thing? Si Yi's twinkling eyes narrowed, the corners of his lips curling upwards. However, after hearing Yun Jian's words, he felt an inexplicable sense of satisfaction. In contrast to Si Yi, Si Chu, Shurichuan, and Shi Laixiang's faces darkened. Si Chu and Shurichuan had intended to get close to each other by marrying their children, but after Yun Jian's words, both of them turned pale. Shi Laixiang was even paler. When she looked at Yun Jian again, she wanted nothing more than to tear her into pieces. Si Chu and Shurichuan knew that if they became enemies with the Kosha mercenaries because of this, both of their families would be removed from the international scene. Shurichuan, on the other hand, was afraid that his precious daughter would cause more trouble if he stayed any longer, so he made up a random excuse and left the banquet in a hurry. Cough, since and you are truly in love, then I shouldn't break you up. Si Chu tried to smooth things over. Today's matter was unexpected, but even so, a sly old fox like Si Chu could quickly minimize the impact of this matter on him. Moreover, it was uncertain whether his son, Si Yi, would still be together with Yun Jian when the time came. It wasn't too late to bring up this matter after today. When she heard Si Chu say, truly in love, Yun Jian's eyelids twitched and she blinked. The banquet finally came to an end. Snake. Lizard left the banquet hall to attend to her own matters. Yun Jian walked side by side with Si Yi. Suddenly, she reached out and poked Si Yi's arm, winking mischievously as she teased, I even sacrificed my reputation to help you just now. You should at least thank me. Those who knew Yun Jian well knew that she didn't joke often. This was a rare occasion when Yun Jian was in the mood to joke with Si Yi. I never thank people. Si Yi looked at Yun Jian playfully. Suddenly, her eyes became sharp and her deep eyes lit up under the street lights. But, he paused and looked at Yun Jian from head to toe. You can repay me with your body. Yun Jian was completely dumbfounded. She never thought that the usually cold and arrogant Si Yi would have such a playboy side. However, before she could think any further, a man in his 20s suddenly walked out from the darkness. The long scar on the man's neck left a deep impression. The person who came was Shuang. Shuang saw that Yun Jian was also here. He paused for a moment, but still went up to Si Yi and said, Young master. Yun Jian was stunned. She knew very well that Shuang was one of the 4 leaders of the Inhun organization. This was because she was an agent trained by the Inhun organization in her previous life. He's one of your men? Yun Jian asked the question that was bothering her. Si did not hide it at all as he answered, yes. Yun Jian did not ask further after that. There's no outsider here. Just say it. Si Yi glanced at Shuang from the corner of his eyes. Si Yi's words implied that Yun Jian was not an outsider. Shuang nodded and said, there's a change in the organization. Si Yi could already tell what had happened from the 5 words. He turned to look at Yun Jian, his handsome face tilted slightly to show her an exquisite outline. I have something to do. Looks like I can't go back to Longmen City with you. You go back first. For some reason, when Yun Jian heard what he said, it felt like there was something going on between them. Her cheeks heated as she nodded slightly. Si Yi then sent Yun Jian to his private jet considerately before leaving with Shuang. The private jet took off immediately. As they were more familiar with the journey back, it only took them 8 hours to return to Country Z. Chapter 135. At 4:00 in the afternoon, Yun Jian arrived home on time and carried her bag back to school for the weekend's evening self-study session. When the evening self-study session ended, Chen Sini turned around and patted her bulging bag, grinning at Yun Jian. "Jian, I bet you didn't bring any snacks, did you? It's okay though, heh, I stuffed my bag full. We'll eat together tomorrow." Not only did the scene of Yun Jian shooting Shiniji's hand the other day not make Chen Sini afraid of distancing herself from her, she was even more affectionate toward her. Yun Jian's lips curled into a smile. Master. Before his seat had even warmed up after class, Zhang Xiaofan rushed to Yun Jian's seat and said hot-bloodedly, "Master, you must teach me real skills this time. I'm always ready." In fact, Yun Jian had never promised Zhang Xiaofan to teach him anything. It was Zhang Xiaofan who was the one asking her for advice. This time, however, Yun Jian did not evade Zhang Xiaofan's request. Her smile faded and she looked sharp and serious. "You really want to learn from me?" When Zhang Xiaofan heard Yun Jian agreeing to his request, he nodded without hesitation. Yes. His reaction was so quick that it was as if he was afraid that Yun Jian would go back on her word. "All right. I'll teach you." Yun Jian's eyes shifted, her initial smile gone. Slaying God had never taken in a disciple in her previous life. All this while, Zhang Xiaofan had been calling her master, but she had never agreed to his request. Today, she planned to make an exception. Yun Jian paused for a moment, and a vicious aura emanated from her body. She looked at Zhang Xiaofan and said to him in a fierce tone, without the slightest hint of joking, "Be my disciple. I will train you and make you a first-class expert, but the premise is that you are not allowed to complain no matter how hard it is. No matter how hard it is, you can only swallow it in your stomach. If you can't do it, you can say no now. But if you stop halfway, I'll let you know how close you are to death." Yun Jian didn't seem to be joking at all. There was only one meaning she wanted to express. Once you enter this circle, you can't leave. Even if you die, you have to kneel until the end. What's more, if her disciple couldn't even endure this bit of hardship, what right did she have to stand on the same side as her? Slaying God would never accept weaklings around her. Zhang Xiaofang's eyelids twitched when he heard Yun Jian's words. He knew that Yun Jian was a woman of her words. However, he clenched his fists and said to Yun Jian with determination, "I can do it." "All right." Yun Jian smiled at him and said, "See you at the field tomorrow at 4:00 in the morning." "Huh? 4:00? Zhang Xiaofan was stunned. 4:00 in the south was not even dawn yet. Yun Jian shot him a fierce glare and Zhang Xiaofan immediately swallowed his words. Chen Sini watched from the side and snickered. Early the next morning, the sky was still dark. As expected, Zhang Xiaofan was caught by Yun Jian for training in the field. Zhang Xiaofan didn't have any foundation in killing moves. Fortunately, his body was flexible and he said that he had practiced judo and taekwondo before. Yun Jian made him run around the field. She didn't want to train him to be an expert in fighting. Instead, she wanted him to be someone who could protect himself and kill a high-level assassin. After a whole morning of training, Zhang Xiaofan was exhausted. However, he obeyed what he said earlier and didn't complain at all. Both of them only walked out of the field and headed to the classroom at 5:50 a.m. At 6:20 a.m., a bus contracted by the school arrived outside the school. The teachers arranged seats for the students one by one and the bus headed to the location of the spring outing, the forest park. Sitting in the bus, Yun Jian looked at the youthful and excited faces of the students around her and could not help but smile. Chapter 136. Forest Park was a first-class botanical park in Longmen City. There were professional gardeners taking care of the flora and fauna in the park. At the same time, there were many game venues and an empty plot of land for tourists to have a barbecue. Therefore, there was an endless stream of tourists visiting during the cool seasons of spring and autumn. Once they got off the bus, the teachers allowed the students to do whatever they wanted. Chen Sini pulled Yun Jian along as she looked around and walked quickly. Zhang Xiaofan, who was behind them, carried 2 heavy school bags and ran to catch up. He could not help grumbling to Chen Sini, F***CKU, Chen Sini. These bags are so heavy and you have the nerve to ask me to carry them for you. Huh, just take it as training for you. Here, I'm helping you train your physique better. You should be thanking me. Chen Sini stomped her feet and chuckled cheekily. Jian, there's a game of shooting balloons with toy guns over there. You can even win a big doll if you hit the jackpot. You're so accurate, let's go over and play. Chen Sini tugged Yun Jian and ran over excitedly. Zhang Xiaofan wiped his sweat and groaned inwardly as he carried the 2 heavy school bags. In the end, he gritted his teeth and followed them angrily. The balloon shooting game had only become popular recently. It was available in some parks, scenic spots, or large entertainment venues. Little boys liked to play with toy pistols, sniper rifles, and rifles. This balloon shooting game used this kind of toy rifle to shoot balloons. The bullet fired by the rifle was only a small bullet the size of a soybean. It was not a real bullet and had no lethality, so even if it hit, there was no danger at all. Of course, there was a limit to the number of bullets used in the balloon shooting game. After paying the corresponding amount, the player could shoot 15 bullets and burst a few balloons with each bullet. The corresponding prize would be given according to the number of balloons burst. If each of the 15 bullets could burst a balloon, the player could win the biggest prize, a big doll about a meter in size. Of course, these toy rifles had been tampered with by the boss, so the bullets fired from them were all off target. Otherwise, if everyone got shot, the boss would definitely suffer a loss. Boss, we want to play once. Chen Sini pulled Yun Jian to stand in front of the balloon shooting game table, paid the money, and giggled. The boss was a fat, middle-aged man with a bald head. When he saw that Chen Sini and Yun Jian were playing his game, he rubbed his hands and smiled so widely that his eyes almost became a line. Reaching out to take the money, he was secretly happy, but his mouth said, "Okay." His balloon shooting game was designed to earn the most money from students like Chen Sini and Yun Jian. At this moment, he was naturally overjoyed. He thought, look, 2 more female students have come to give me money. How could people like them hit the jackpot? At that time, as long as there was a small prize, he would make a profit again. Since Yun Jian and Chen Sini were the prettiest and there was also Zhang Xiaofan, a popular figure in school, the balloon shooting game gradually attracted a group of students who came to watch the show. Jian, you do it. Chen Sini passed the toy rifle to Yun Jian and pointed at a big doll excitedly, telling Yun Jian, Jian, you can do it. I want that big doll, it's so cute. Yun Jian smiled and took the toy rifle, but she was not ready to aim. Sis Sini, why didn't you let me have that doll if you want it? A man's teasing voice interrupted the conversation and said to Chen Sini, Sis Sini, why didn't you let me have that doll if you wanted it? Everyone looked over at the voice and saw a good-looking boy who was slightly tall and slender walking over. He went to Chen Sini arrogantly and looked at the toy rifle in Yun Jian's hand before he spoke to Chen Sini again in a boastful tone. Sis Sini, have you forgotten that I've officially learned marksmanship from a master? If you want this doll, you can't let a little beauty shoot it for you instead of me. Chapter 137. As the boy spoke, he reached for the toy rifle in Yun Jian's hand. With a frown, Yun Jian turned her hand away and avoided the boy's hand. The boy did not feel awkward as he chuckled and studied Yun Jian from head to toe. Pretty girl, you won't be able to hit a balloon with a gun like this. Why don't I teach you how to do it, Ling Yichen, aren't you annoying? We're having fun on our own. Are you done? Chen Sini could not help yelling at the boy. Ling Yichen was the son of Chen Sini's father's business partner. He could be considered her childhood playmate as well. However, due to Ling Yichen's boastful personality, Chen Sini did not like to play with him since they were young. Ling Yichen was also known as a playboy in school. Due to his good looks and prominent family background, many girls admired him. He was a boy who changed girlfriends more frequently than he changed clothes. It was because of this that Chen Sini kept a respectful distance from him. "Aya, Sister Sini, who are we? Don't make it sound like we're so distant." Ling Yichen was indeed a master flirt. He managed to turn the awkward situation around with just a few sentences. In spite of it, Ling Yichen's dark eyes were fixed on Yunjian as he spoke to Chen Sini, looking like he was deep in thought. Chen Sini was dumbfounded for a moment before she realized what was going on. Was Ling Yichen trying to set his sights on Jian? She quickly pulled Yunjian behind her and said to Ling Yichen, "Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Jian is my friend. Don't you dare set your sights on her." "That's right. Sini, your cousin supports you." Zhang Xiaofan chimed in from the side. It was rare for the siblings to be united for once. The atmosphere then turned a little strange. Yunjian blinked and looked at Chen Sini and Zhang Xiaofan, who were protecting her like a treasure. She couldn't help but grin. "Look at you, Sini. You're talking as if I'm a gangster. Do I look like such a rascal to you?" Ling Yichen laughed and continued to bicker with Chen Sini in his unique teasing voice. "You." Just as Chen Sini was about to flare up at Ling Yichen, Yunjian turned her delicate face to Chen Sini and asked, "Which doll do you want?" As she spoke, she weighed the toy rifle in her hand. It was only then that Chen Sini regained her senses. Exhaling in relief, she snorted at Ling Yichen and smiled at Yunjian, pointing at a big bunny doll. Jian, I want that big bunny." "Okay." Yunjian narrowed her eyes, a clean smile forming on her lips. The crowd was displeased with Yunjian's confidence. Someone even yelled out, "How can you get this big doll just because you want it? Unless you shoot 15 balloons. Don't talk like you're a sharpshooter. Can you guarantee that you'll hit the balloon every time you shoot?" The disgruntled voice came from Lu Rongrong, who hated Yunjian to the core. Ling Yichen was annoyed that Yunjian ignored her right after she opened her mouth, but he had always been a patient man when it came to beautiful women. Ling Yichen flipped his hair coolly. Seeing Lu Rongrong's rude remarks to Yunjian, he was about to step in and save the damsel in distress to help Yunjian and make Yunjian change her opinion of him instantly. All he saw was Yunjian looking at Lu Rongrong with a grin. She lifted her chin slightly, her hand that held the toy rifle raised and fired at the balloons without even looking at the cloth that held them. Bang, 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 the sound of balloons exploding when they were hit by the gun echoed in everyone's ears. The girl with the toy rifle did not even look at the cloth. She was shooting blindly. 15 bullets, not a single one missed. Chapter 138. At this moment, even Chen Sini and Zhang Xiaofan, who had seen Yunjian's marksmanship before, were stunned. She could actually shoot balloons blindly, and not a single one of the 15 bullets missed. Only someone who was very familiar with guns could do this. And she, Yunjian, was just an ordinary student. The surroundings were quiet, especially Ling Yichen. He put on a "what the f***ck" expression and stood there in a daze, not even moving an inch. On the other hand, it was Lu Rongrong's first time witnessing Yunjian's skills. She was dumbfounded on the spot. At this moment, she didn't even think about her own trick anymore. Her eyes only revealed shock and fear. "I'm so sorry, I accidentally hit all of them." Yunjian smiled and looked at the crowd. She didn't feel that there was anything wrong with what she said. However, the crowd who had watched from the beginning to the end knew that Yunjian's words were meant for Lu Rongrong and Ling Yichen. Even the thick-skinned Lu Rongrong and Ling Yichen couldn't help but smile at this. Zhang Xiaofan and Chen Sini snickered at the side, especially Chen Sini. She even gave Yun Jian a thumbs up. Then, Chen Sini asked the shop owner for a big bunny doll. The shop owner's face was bitter, and his heart was filled with regret. However, in front of so many people, he didn't dare to go back on his word and refused to give Chen Sini the big doll. If he went back on his word in front of everyone, who would dare to play his game of shooting balloons? Then, how would he earn money? The shop owner's face drooped, and he slowly and unwillingly handed the big bunny doll to Chen Sini. Chen Sini held the big bunny doll happily. She even shook the big bunny doll at Ling Yichen and made a funny face. In the end, Lu Rongrong ran away with her tail between her legs. Before she left, she even flashed a wicked smile. Whenever she thought of the mysterious woman she met last night, who said that she would help her teach Yun Jian a lesson, she couldn't help but feel happy. Moreover, that mysterious woman said that as long as she lured Yun Jian to her place today, she would teach Yun Jian a lesson. Lu Rongrong couldn't help but snicker in her heart. Humph, Yun Jian, you're the one who provoked me. Lu Rongrong cursed inwardly for a while and revealed an evil smile. She had already thought of a solution. Forest Park was a scenic spot located in a primeval forest. Later generations had only transformed the forest, but the scenery in the park was all from nature. Therefore, it gave people a pristine feeling, allowing people to breathe in waves of fresh air while standing in it. After the balloon shooting game, Yun Jian, Chen Sini, and the others sat on a tranquil lawn in the park. The surrounding trees provided shade, and the branches and leaves of the trees acted as a shelter, so they were not afraid of being exposed to the scorching sun at noon. Not only did Ling Yichen not leave because of that incident, he even shamelessly followed Yun Jian and the rest. Yun Jian and the rest did not purposely stop him. They just treated him as if he did not exist. Chen Sini sat for a while and opened countless bags of snacks. The snacks were dry in her mouth and she even drank a lot of water in the morning, so she felt the urge to pee now. Jian Jian, I'm going to the washroom. You stay here. You have to keep an eye on the rest of the snacks. We can't let the two dumb pigs, Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen, eat them no matter what. Chen Sini declared her sovereignty over the snacks domineeringly with her hands on her hips and turned to run to the washroom. Yun Jian could not help smiling with her lips pressed together. Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen who were called out had their lips twitched instead. It was only about 25 minutes later that Chen Sini had yet to return from the washroom. Yun Jian could not help frowning. The washroom was not far from here. Even if Chen Sini wanted to go to the washroom, she should not have taken so long. Sini didn't fall into a trap, did she? Huh. Zhang Xiaofan broke the silence with a chuckle, stuffing a mouthful of chips into his mouth. No. Yun Jian looked down and stood up abruptly to walk to the washroom. What's wrong? Zhang Xiaofan stopped teasing as well, sensing the unusual atmosphere in Yun Jian. At this moment, a girl ran over from outside the lawn, panting. She was a girl in her class who did not like to talk much but she was running frantically. She ran to Yun Jian and the rest in fear and shouted timidly, Chen Sini, she was, the girl could not catch her breath. She took 2 deep breaths and continued, she's been taken away by a group of cruel people. They look like gangsters. It's so scary. I met Chen Sini in the washroom just now. We came out of the washroom together and that group of people rushed up and took her away. Sob sob sob. Chapter 139. What? As soon as the girl said that, Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen, who were sitting on the lawn, jumped up. Although the two of them often bickered with Chen Sini, they still treated Chen Sini as their own sister at critical moments. Therefore, when they heard the girl say that Chen Sini had been kidnapped by a group of unknown villains, their faces immediately turned green. Which direction did she go? In contrast, Yun Jian was much calmer as she asked the girl. The girl still hadn't recovered from her fear, but she still pointed in a direction. She was still in a state of sobbing. Yun Jian lifted her feet and walked in that direction. After a few steps, she began to run. Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen couldn't care less about the pile of snacks on the lawn. They lifted their feet and chased after Yun Jian. However, even though the two of them ran with all their might, they still couldn't catch up to Yun Jian. Zhang Xiaofan was already used to this kind of thing, but Ling Yichen was different. Yun Jian's marksmanship had already left him speechless. Now, even her running was as fast as flying. Ling Yichen couldn't help but wonder if Yun Jian had been in the army. Otherwise, how could she have such marksmanship and speed? Yun Jian was faster than Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen when she reached the toilet where Chen Sini had been kidnapped. She looked around and narrowed her eyes. It was too late to chase after her now. Chen Sini must have been taken out of the forest park by now. Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen ran to Yun Jian's side, panting. Ling Yichen couldn't help but be surprised when he saw that Yun Jian was running so fast without panting. "Master, what should we do now?" Zhang Xiaofan asked anxiously. After all, he was born into a rich family and had never encountered such a situation before. Naturally, he was anxious and scared. "Let's call the police," Ling Yichen suggested. "It's too late. By the time the police started their investigation, it would be too late." Yun Jian turned her head and said to Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen. Compared to the two of them, she was fearless in the face of danger. Chen Sini was directly kidnapped. Yun Jian felt that this matter was not so simple. "Do you have a cell phone?" Yun Jian looked at Zhang Xiaofan. She didn't bring her phone, mainly because it was inconvenient for her to go on a trip today. To put it simply, she was too lazy to bring it. Yes. Zhang Xiaofan hurriedly took out a mobile phone from his pocket. He didn't ask what Yun Jian was going to do. He didn't know why he had such a feeling, as if as long as Yun Jian was here, this matter would be resolved safely. Yun Jian took the phone. Her nimble fingers pressed a few buttons on the phone and made a call. There were no touchscreen phones in this era, and Zhang Xiaofang's phone was from the Nokia brand. Nokia was a brand that had become popular recently. Zhang Xiaofan could keep up with the trend, which meant that his family was indeed rich. Beep, 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 the call was picked up immediately. After the call was connected, there was no sound from the other side. Yun Jian's call was directly to the headquarters of the Wuxia mercenaries intelligence team. The Wuxia mercenaries intelligence team was distributed all over the world. Even if there were some changes in the local feng shui of various countries, the intelligence team would also collect information. Chen Sini had been kidnapped. Yun Jian would ask the intelligence team to investigate thoroughly and get the news as soon as possible. At the same time, the intelligence team of the Wuxia mercenaries would not speak first when they answered the phone. To kill is to stop, to become a god. Yun Jian opened her mouth and uttered the code for intelligence gathering with the intelligence team in fluent English. Chapter 140. After Yun Jian gave the code, the other end of the phone was silent for a few seconds. Then, a low and strange female voice sounded. "What instructions do you have?" Yun Jian knew from the voice that this person was the head of the Wuxia mercenaries intelligence team, Diani. Diani was the head of the Wuxia mercenaries. The intelligence team that she led had always been accurate. Many international business tycoons had bought intelligence from Diani at high prices. The price had even risen to hundreds of millions of US dollars, all for the sake of obtaining accurate information. The intelligence team took up a significant portion of the Wuxia mercenaries' financial income. This could not be helped without the guidance of the intelligence team's head, Diani. "Help me investigate a person." Yun Jian relayed her location and the process of the incident in English. Soon, Diani found the information and reported it to her. Actually, as soon as Yun Jian said the code, Diani already knew that Yun Jian was her superior. However, the intelligence team had always been tight-lipped and never asked about such things. They only knew how to search for information and then report it to the other party. Until Yun Jian hung up and handed the phone back to Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen were still in a daze. They did not understand what Yun Jian said at all. They only knew that she called a foreigner and that the two of them were talking in English. However, at this critical moment, why did she call a foreigner? Yun Jian was already walking forward. The two of them hurriedly followed her footsteps. Yun Jian's lips curled slightly. She reached out and tucked the loose strands of hair behind her ear. She said, "They kidnapped Cindy in a car. The car plate number is Dragon A50855. How did you know the car plate number?" Ling Yichen exclaimed. Yun Jian had only made a phone call. How could she have found out the other party's car plate number? This was illogical. The two of them were shocked and terrified. Yun Jian only smiled faintly. The members of the Wuxia mercenaries' intelligence team were scattered all over the world. The number of members was uncountable. In other words, there is a high possibility that someone you know is a member of the Wuxia mercenaries' intelligence organization, hiding in the city or between the cities. His job was to constantly search for changing information. What's more, the intelligence team didn't just rely on manpower to gather information. They could use any electronic products, and they could even use mobile phones to enter a wide range of systems in the shortest amount of time. However, after excluding the ordinary vehicles in the area, the final result was obtained. Now that we only know the license plate number, how are we going to find Cindy? Zhang Xiaofan asked the key question. Yun Jian, on the other hand, narrowed her eyes and turned her head to the side. The girl's delicate eyebrows twitched as she coldly said, "Based on the license plate number, do you think we can't find the other party's address?" Based on the license plate number, ordinary people would not be able to find the owner's home address. However, the public security organs of some departments could search for it. But don't forget that there is another type of person who can, hackers. Yun Jian was a hacker herself. She was proficient in computer programming, assassination, and explosives. However, this time, Yun Jian didn't need to check the license plate number and the owner's home address. Diani had already told her. However, Yun Jian didn't explain this to Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen. Now wasn't the right time to do so. Then where is Cindy now? Zhang Xiaofan only wanted to know this now. Yun Jian took a step forward with her long, slender legs. Then, she paused and said, "The premium casino." Chapter 141. The finest casino was a casino in itself, where all the gamblers gathered together. The casino itself belonged to the second largest mafia group in Longmen City, the Nine Valleys Gang. There were two major mafia groups in Longmen City. The first was Dragon Head Gang while the second was the Nine Valleys Gang. Su Zetian's Dragon Head Gang had tens of thousands of brothers and owned all the bars and night markets in Longmen City. Su Zetian was also a member of the Wuxia mercenaries, so his position as a mafia boss was secure. However, the second largest mafia group in Longmen City, the Nine Valleys Gang, was not to be underestimated. Other than Dragon Head Gang, the Nine Valleys Gang was the second largest mafia group. Even if they did not have tens of thousands of brothers, they were close to this number. Moreover, he had divided many regions. Even Longmen City's top casino, the famous Prime Casino, belonged to the Nine Valleys Gang. As the saying goes, a mountain cannot accommodate two tigers. As the underworld boss, Su Zetian naturally wanted to eliminate the Nine Valleys Gang, the only big gang that could threaten him. In spite of this, he did not have the strength to do so. The Wuxia mercenaries could send someone to help him win a match, but they would not go to such lengths to eliminate the Nine Valleys Gang that was a threat to him, a mere mafia boss of Longmen City. It was unrealistic. In addition, the Nine Valleys gang's influence was not weak, especially in recent years when they had gained more power. Su Zetian could no longer eliminate them with his Dragon Head gang's influence alone, so he could only let them continue to develop. Yun Jian and the other two did not have time to inform their homeroom teacher as they left the forest park and hailed a taxi to the Prime Casino. To be honest, Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen were still rather fearful of places like the Prime Casino. The term mafia was enough to send chills down one's spine. Nine Valleys Gang, the entrance of the Prime Casino. The taxi driver parked his car far away and drove off immediately after Yun Jian paid the fare. He could not be blamed for this. For places like the Prime Casino that belonged to mafia groups, it was common for some gamblers to be chopped off and stomped on the spot when they lost and could not afford to pay. Standing at the entrance of the casino, Yun Jian had her hands in her pockets. Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen stood diagonally behind her. She tilted her head and looked at the two trembling youths. "Don't go in if you're afraid." She could easily handle the entire casino on her own, but with Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen, she could not guarantee that no accidents would happen. "No. Master, I want to go in," Zhang Xiaofan said in a firm tone. Hearing Zhang Xiaofang's words, Yun Jian smiled wickedly and turned to look at Ling Yichen. After being stared at for a while, Ling Yichen finally said resolutely, "I'll go in too." "All right." Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and turned to look at Zhang Xiaofang. She smiled wickedly at him and said arrogantly, "You can keep a low profile when you do things, but today, I'm going to teach you a lesson. Since you've stepped into my circle, you have to remember this. If someone bullies you, even if it's the emperor, you won't tolerate it. No matter what the Nine Valleys gang's motive was or why they kidnapped Shensini, Yun Jian would never keep a low profile when dealing with such an enemy. Because if you cower today, there won't be a place for you in this world anymore." Yun Jian continued to narrate. Just like in her previous life, if she was not strong, if she kept a low profile and did not show her strength, even if others bullied her, she would have died a long time ago. Survival of the fittest, elimination of the weak. And she, Yun Jian, was never a weakling. Zhang Xiaofang listened to Yun Jian's words in a daze. He did not fully understand. It was only when Yun Jian walked towards the casino that the two of them followed closely behind. There were two people who looked like bodyguards standing at the entrance of the casino. When they saw Yun Jian, a little girl, walking towards them, they quickly waved their hands and gestured for her to go away. "Go, go, go. Little brat, where are you going? This is not a place you should be." One of them pointed to the side and shouted at Yun Jian and the rest impatiently. Yun Jian walked up and kicked him. The person was sent flying into the casino. Zhang Xiaofang and Ling Yichen did not expect Yun Jian to be so fierce. The two of them were stunned as they recalled the meaning behind Yun Jian's words to Zhang Xiaofang. The girl had already stepped into the entrance of the casino. She stood at the entrance and stepped on the chest of the bodyguard who had been kicked away. She said loudly, "Get the boss of your Nine Valleys gang to come out and see me." Chapter 142. The Nine Valleys Gang was Longmen City's second mafia group after all, and its influence in Longmen City was immense. Yun Jian's roar was a humiliation to the Nine Valleys Gang members. Soon, a group of brawny men with metal rods dashed out from the inner room and surrounded the trio led by Yun Jian. A man with dyed yellow hair walked out from the group with a cigarette dangling from his mouth. He studied Yun Jian and spat the cigarette on the floor. The man with dyed yellow hair turned his menacing face to look at Yun Jian from the corner of his eye and spoke arrogantly, "Yo. Little girl, you want to see our boss? Isn't your tone a little too presumptuous? Aren't you afraid that we'll do something to you?" The blond man's voice was sinister when he spoke. His eyes were still on Yun Jian when he spoke the last sentence, looking like a ruffian who wanted more. "Brother Huang, why are you talking to her? How dare this brat call our boss by his name and ask him to come out? Pfft, let's teach her a lesson first. Let these 3 brats know that our boss's name isn't to be insulted by anyone. A lackey standing beside the blond man shouted at him and waved the metal rod in his hand as if boasting about his prowess. Ha! Yun Jian scoffed in response. At the same time, Yun Jian took a step forward. Her cold, hawk-like eyes stared at the group before her as she smirked. Do you think you're qualified to teach me a lesson? After that, Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen, who were standing not far behind Yun Jian, saw Yun Jian stretch out her hands. A few stones the size of diamonds appeared between her fair and clean fingers. She waved her hands and hurled the stones out. These stones were like several sharp swords, and with frightening speed and accuracy, they smashed towards the group of strong men holding iron rods. Plop, plop, an orderly sound rang out. The 6 to 7 brawny men who were holding metal rods were hit in the knees by pebbles, and all of them knelt down toward Yun Jian in the order they were spread out around them. Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen were completely dumbfounded. Both of them thought that Yun Jian's ability had been unleashed to its fullest when she was shooting. What was going on here though? Throwing stones at the same time and hitting a few brawny men in one move. It was impossible to execute such a move without extremely precise technique. They had only seen such a scene in a movie where an assassin killed someone. Yun Jian knew how to kill people? Both of them were dumbfounded. Let's go. Yun Jian turned her head to instruct Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen. Then, she stepped over the group of brawny men who were kneeling on the ground and had no idea what had just happened. She had picked up these stones from the lawn in the park. She did not expect them to come in handy. Although they were not as handy as hidden weapons, they were not too shabby either. No matter how suspicious Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen were, they would never think that Yun Jian was an assassin or a secret agent. They did not dare to continue standing in the same spot. So, while the yellow-haired man and the others were stunned, they followed Yun Jian's footsteps. They stepped over the screen at the entrance and walked straight to the center of the casino. In the center of the casino, wave after wave of gamblers sat together, making a racket. Big. Big, I'll bet on big. Small. Small. Small, this round will definitely be small. The gamblers were having a good time. Their tireless voices echoed throughout the casino. At this moment, Yun Jian led Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen around the lively casino and walked straight to the back door. Chapter 143. Yun Jian, Ling Yichen, and Ling Yichen passed through the center of the smoky casino and entered through the back door. Everyone in the casino was busy gambling to further enhance the atmosphere of the place. No one had the time to care about Yun Jian, Ling Yichen, and Ling Yichen's actions. Passing through the back door, the ruckus in the front hall abruptly subsided. Follow me closely from now on. No matter what happens, don't leave my sight, Yun Jian turned to instruct Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen who were behind her. Okay. Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen nodded. Both of them did not know what Yun Jian meant, but after witnessing Yun Jian's skills and tactics, they chose to believe her unconditionally. They then passed through a dark corridor without lights. Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen held their breaths, not daring to even breathe loudly. They had never thought that they would be able to barge into the mafia's territory one day. To them, the mafia was the most terrifying place in existence. The girl who led them forward, however, did not show the slightest hint of fear. We're here. Yun Jian smirked with a squint. As she spoke, she glanced sideways at a room with warm lighting in front of them. Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen's breaths paused, but they did not say a word, as if they had made a pact. Yun Jian, on the other hand, walked forward casually. The room with the orange light from the door was the office of Longmen City's second mafia boss, Yuan Shuxiao. The corridor was dark, and there were no windows. Therefore, one could clearly see the warm light coming from the room. From this, Yun Jian was certain that the person was inside. In contrast to Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen's cautiousness, Yun Jian went straight ahead, unafraid of making a commotion. She went to the door and kicked it open. If she was uncertain before, she was now certain that she was the reason Chen Sini was taken away. Their target was her. Perhaps it was the experience of her younger brother being taken away and killed in her past life that made Yun Jian loathe those who took away the people she cared about. She hated being threatened. She hated people who used the people she cared about to threaten her. Clang! Yun Jian's kick was so forceful that it broke the door lock. It was a testament to her strength. At the same time, not only Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen shuddered, the people inside the room felt their eyelids twitching. There were 3 people standing in the room. The middle-aged man in a suit standing in the middle of the trio was the Nine Valleys gang's boss, Yuan Xuxiao. When Yuan Xuxiao heard the door's broken door lock, he shuddered and goosebumps all over his body. The other 2 men standing next to Yuan Xuxiao did not look any better. Just when the 3 people in the room were staring at the young girl who had broken through the door, they saw the young girl raise her foot and walk into the room. She used her sharp and deep eyes to look at Yuan Xuxiao. She called out Yuan Xuxiao's full name directly, her tone scornful and arrogant. Yuan Xuxiao, are you declaring war against the Kosha mercenaries by taking my people away? The girl's tone was frivolous, but her words made Yuan Xuxiao and the other 3 men gasp. Chapter 144. Kosha Mercenaries was a team formed by the world's top mercenaries. It was the vanguard among the assassin organizations. Other than an Hun group, Kosha mercenaries could be said to be invincible in the world. Whenever Yuan Xuxiao mentioned such an organization to his brothers in the past, he would be shocked by it. Yun Jian slammed the door and walked in, humiliating Yuan Xuxiao and his men. Just as they were about to lash out at the young and frivolous girl, they did not expect her to boast shamelessly that she was a member of Kosha mercenaries. Yuan Xuxiao understood that if an ordinary person spouted nonsense in the name of Kosha mercenaries, the Kosha mercenaries would seek revenge from them. Since Yun Jian dared to say it, she must be a member of Kosha mercenaries, unless she had a death wish. Kosha mercenaries had spies all over the world and could even find out about trivial matters. If Yun Jian was just a member of Kosha mercenaries like Su Zetian, Yuan Xuxiao would not have to be so frightened and shocked. Kosha mercenaries had members all over the world. There were plenty of people like Su Zetian who occupied a position in Longmen City but had no status in Kosha mercenaries. In spite of it, Yuan Xuxiao grasped Yun Jian's words tightly. She had actually said something like, "Do you want to start a war with us Kosha mercenaries?" It could be said that her position in Kosha mercenaries was extraordinary. She could even summon Kosha mercenaries to start a war with him. Otherwise, a mere member of Kosha mercenaries would not dare to use such an arrogant tone and claim to be a member of Kosha mercenaries. Therefore, Yuan Xuxiao, the woman standing next to him, and his confidant standing next to him were all stunned. They were dumbfounded. The girl before them who looked underage was actually a high-ranking member of Kosha mercenaries? The news was too shocking. Of course, Yuan Xuxiao and his men did not know how they would react if they knew that Yun Jian was the boss of Kosha mercenaries. Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen who followed Yun Jian in were dumbfounded as well. Kosha mercenaries? How could they not know? It was an internationally renowned mercenary organization. In spite of it, Zhang Xiaofeng and Ling Yichen knew that Yun Jian was just an ordinary third-year middle school girl. Thinking about it, both of them frowned and decided to wait and see what would happen. Did I take your men away? My young friend, you can't simply say that. I'm a man of the underworld, but I've never done anything outrageous. Yuan Xuxiao's attitude toward Yun Jian was very amiable. At least from Yuan Xuxiao's point of view, it did not matter if Yun Jian was really a high-ranking member of Kosha mercenaries. But he would rather assume that she was a high-ranking member than take the risk of angering Kosha mercenaries. Yun Jian scoffed and went straight to Yuan Xiuxiao's desk from the door. Lifting her hand, she tapped lightly on the surface of the desk with her finger. "You didn't?" Yun Jian scoffed and crossed her legs to sit on the desk. Crossing her left leg over her right leg, she crossed her legs lazily and looked at Yuan Xiuxiao. "The license plate is Dragon A? 50855 Yuan Xiuxiao, do you dare say that your Nine Valleys gang did not take my men away?" Yuan Xiuxiao was stunned. The license plate was indeed his Nine Valleys gang's car. But he did not send anyone to take her away. At this moment, the woman standing beside Yuan Xiuxiao trembled when she heard Yun Jian's words. Yun Jian saw the woman's action. Yun Jian suddenly smirked and jumped down from the desk. She walked to the woman in a few steps. Chapter 145. Looking at the dagger that appeared out of nowhere in Yun Jian's hand, the group was stunned. Yuan Xiuxiao, in particular, shuddered and wanted to push Yun Jian away, but he stopped himself and told Yun Jian in a trembling voice, Young friend, this must be a misunderstanding. Xiaoyu is my sister. She just came back from studying in country Y. How could she have a grudge against you or your people? It's even more impossible for her to take your people away. Can you put the dagger down first? The woman was none other than Yuan Xiuxiao's biological sister, Yuan Xiaoyu. As the boss of Longmen City's second mafia group, Yuan Xiuxiao's position in Longmen City was second only to Su Zetian. He was also a big shot, but he had never shown weakness to anyone like today. She, Yun Jian, was the first. In spite of it, Yuan Xiuxiao had a feeling that if he angered Yun Jian, the dagger in her hand would really slit his sister's neck brutally. Yuan Xiuxiao was known for his decisiveness in killing, but his only weakness was his sister, Yuan Xiaoyu. He lost his father when he was young and his mother remarried, leaving him and his sister behind. They were homeless back then and his sister was his only family. Therefore, when Yuan Xiuxiao saw Yun Jian's dagger pressed against Yuan Xiaoyu's neck, he shuddered and his heart almost leaped out of his chest. Yuan Xiaoyu herself did not expect Yun Jian to threaten her with a dagger. She was so frightened that her legs turned to jelly and she was paralyzed but not paralyzed. Are you going to tell me or not? Yun Jian did not listen to Yuan Xiuxiao but asked Yuan Xiaoyu further while the dagger in her hand pressed closer to Yuan Xiaoyu's skin. Yuan Xiaoyu could even feel the coldness of her pores and the dagger's handle getting closer. She shuddered and could not help screaming, "No, no, no. Don't kill me." Sob. "Don't kill me. It's not me, it's not me. I didn't do it on purpose." Sob. Zhang Xiaofan and Ling Yichen thought that Yun Jian had made a mistake too, but their eyes were now on Yun Jian and the seemingly harmless woman, Yuan Xiaoyu. "Xiaoyu, what did you say?" Yuan Xiuxiao did not expect that his sister would actually admit it. In his impression, his sister had always been well-behaved and obedient. He did not expect that she would really kidnap Yun Jian's people. He looked at her in disbelief. Yuan Xiaoyu pursed her lips nervously. Her body trembled, and she suddenly cried out loudly. However, Yun Jian narrowed her eyes and curled her lips. She put down the dagger, crossed her arms and looked at Yun Jian who was squatting on the ground. She said coldly, "The person you are looking for should be me, Yun Jian, right?" Hearing the two words, Yun Jian, Yuan Xiaoyu, who was squatting on the ground, raised her head. Her face was slightly pale as she nodded shakily. Under Yuan Xiuxiao's mediation, Yuan Xiaoyu finally told the truth unwillingly. Indeed, Yuan Xiaoyu did not have a grudge against Yun Jian. The one who had a grudge against Yun Jian was Shiniji, who had lost to Yun Jian in the arena not long ago and had his hands crippled by Yun Jian. Shiniji was a contestant in Country-Wise National Challenge Tournament. His future was ruined after his hands were crippled and he was filled with anger. Coincidentally, Shiniji's sister and Yuan Xiaoyu were roommates in Country-Wise Gaya University and they were good friends. In short, Yuan Xiaoyu used her brother Yuan Xiuxiao's underworld power to help Shiniji's sister find Yunjian and help her take revenge on Yunjian. Yunjian was not easy to deal with. Yuan Xiaoyu knew this from the beginning, so she used Lu Rongrong, who was not on good terms with Yunjian's classmate, to tell Lu Rongrong that she could help her teach Yunjian a lesson as long as she could trick Yunjian into coming out. However, later in the forest park, Lu Rongrong did not have the chance to trick Yunjian out alone. Coincidentally, she bumped into Chen Sini, who was best friends with Yunjian, going to the toilet. Therefore, Lu Rongrong asked Yuan Xiaoyu's people to take Chen Sini away first. She also claimed that as long as she used Chen Sini to threaten Yunjian, she would not be afraid of Yunjian being arrogant again. Lu Rongrong. Yunjian smiled contemptuously. Her lips curled into a murderous smile. Although she was smiling, the temperature in the room dropped by a few degrees. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.